Chapter 1769. Yes, I understand. Xiao Hua said bitterly. This Zhongyao milk is really hard to find. There's no Zhongyao milk in the air. There's no Zhongyao milk on the ground. There's only condensation at the bottom of the trenches. We can't go underground to find it. Looking at Xiao Hua's exaggerated bitter smile, Sun Shu felt an unspeakable pain in her heart. She just wanted this trip to be as long as possible. Seeing Sun Shu standing there in a daze, Xiao Hua hurriedly waved his hand and said, I'm leaving. Senior sister, be careful too. And Sun Shu came back to her senses and nodded sadly. She walked forward reluctantly. Xiao Hua walked a few steps and waited for a moment. After releasing his spiritual sense, he activated his Buddhist consciousness and opened his delirium breaker Dharma eye. Inside his Dharma eye, there were yellow dots of light. It was the brilliance of the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. There were very few lights of other colors in this space. Just as Xiao Hua was walking slowly, his Dharma, I suddenly saw a dozen or so slightly bright dots of light in the air. Could this be Zhongyao milk? Xiao Hua was overjoyed and flew up. However, just as he flew up, he was surprised. The earth element's spiritual energy in this space was so thick that not only did it press down on his body, it was also very strenuous for him to fly. How could Xiao Hua be compared to an ordinary cultivator? He had always been the master of breaking through with force. Why would he care about this little bit of weight? Xiao Hua still effortlessly flew up into the air and put those tens of thumb-sized beads into his bag. Looking at those thumb-sized beads, Xiao Hua seemed to be lost in thought. This bead was crystal clear and had a yellow color. It was the essence of earth power, not the Zhongyao milk. What a pity I have a fire element physique and also cultivate a fire element cultivation method. Xiao Hua giggled as he kept the beads. He thought to himself, I can't use these earth elemental essences. Otherwise, the earth elemental cultivation method jade scroll I got from the spirit husbandry sect disciple last time would be equivalent to several years of cultivation outside if I were to cultivate for 6 hours in this space. Previously, when Xiao Hua killed 4 spirit husbandry sect disciples, he left behind a foundation establishment realm cultivation technique. Sun Shu and the others didn't care about it, so Xiao Hua had no choice but to take it himself. Now that he saw that the earth element spirit energy in the space was abnormally dense, he couldn't help but sigh. After putting away the earth condensed pearl, Xiao Hua landed on the ground and used his transcendence vision to observe the underground. Although his transcendence vision could only penetrate several zhong deep into the ground, there were many spatial cracks and a lot of scarlet and sticky things. With just a glance, one could tell that it was not something easy to deal with. Without Sun Shu's warning, Xiao Hua would not have casually used Earth Escape. The space seemed to be very big, and one's eyes and spiritual sense couldn't go far. Xiao Hua was like a headless fly, unable to distinguish north from south. Although he said that he was going forward, the ground was sometimes high and sometimes low, and there were no obvious signs. After a short while, Xiao Hua was completely lost. Perhaps it was because the spiritual qi of the earth was very rich. There were no plants in the space, let alone spirit beasts. Along the way, there was only earth and stones. These stones were very hard. Xiao Hua was very interested in them at first, thinking that they were some kind of spirit stones. Unfortunately, after seeing a few of them, he even used his devil hammer to smash a few of them. However, the spiritual qi inside these stones was much more than ordinary stones, even inferior to low-grade spirit stones. However, Xiao Hua had the illusion breaker Dharma eye, so he collected a lot of earth condensed pearls along the way. As he walked, a deep gully appeared in front of him. Great, could it be that there is Zhongyao milk? Xiao Hua was overjoyed. He used his spiritual sense to scan the area and took out the cloud suppressing seal to protect himself. Then he opened his illusion breaker Dharma eye. The spiritual energy in the space was abundant, and the cloud suppressing seal's aura was different. The rosy clouds were clearly longer than outside, and the spiritual energy it absorbed was also more. The gully wasn't very deep, it was only about 10 meters long. following the gully's direction. They walked another 30 meters before reaching the end. Xiaohua was slightly disappointed in his heart. He understood that Zhongyao milk shouldn't exist in such a shallow place. What is this? At the end of the gully, there was an inch-sized earth-condensed flower on the stone wall on his left. The flower was in the shape of a hexagonal crystal, sparkling and translucent. It was many times more beautiful than the earth-condensed pearl that Xiaohua had obtained before. Unfortunately, the spiritual energy condensed by this earth-condensed flower was much less than that of the earth-condensed pearl, so he couldn't see it clearly with his illusion breaker Dharma eye. Great! Xiaohua carefully pulled out the earth-condensed flower and stared at it for a long time. He sighed in his heart. Although the illusion breaker Dharma, I could see the essence of spiritual energy, it could see all kinds of spiritual energy, but it ignored the appearance of things. Although for cultivators, the essence was the most important thing, since the Creator had already determined the different forms and appearances of all things. There must be a reason for people to admire them. Seeing a mountain as a mountain is the knowledge of the naked eye. Seeing a mountain as not a mountain is the power of the Dharma eye. Or when the Dharma eye is the naked eye, and the naked eye is the Dharma eye, I'll enter the realm of seeing a mountain as still a mountain. This young master's cultivation is still shallow. I'll slowly see a mountain as not a mountain. Xiaohua smiled and put the earth-condensed flower into his space. But at this moment, his smile froze on his face. He stared at the stone wall next to the earth-condensed flower with a trace of surprise and joy in his eyes. Next to the earth-condensed flower, there was a palm-sized mark. It looked like it was stepped on, but it also looked like it was touched. This stone wall is so hard. How could someone step on it with their feet? Even if a cultivator came here, they wouldn't touch the stone wall with their feet, right? Xiaohua frowned and pondered. Then his eyes lit up. He clapped his hands and took out the puppet wreckage that he had collected in Dark Mystery. He found a similar wreckage and compared it with the imprint. Although it's not a complete match, the size and shape are similar. This mark was probably left by a puppet. Xiaohua thought. From the Dark Mystery to the spatial crack, there were puppets walking in front. Needless to say, there must be a puppet cultivator who knew about Zhongyao. The puppet fragments must have been torn apart by the spatial crack when the cultivator controlled the puppet to explore the path ahead. At the beginning, there were few fragments, but that was because the cultivator cleaned them up. In the end, it was because he didn't have time to clean them up. Since there are puppet footprints here, it means that this place should be the direction to find Zhongyao. But we've already reached the end. Could it be? Thinking about this, Xiaohua slightly wrinkled his brows. Just a moment ago, he had already opened his illusion breaker eye. Behind the stone wall, sure enough, it was just as Sun Shu said. After one zhong, there were only space cracks or scarlet liquid. There was simply no place to pass through. But if there is no path, the puppet wouldn't have stopped here for no reason. Xiaohua rolled his eyes and activated the exquisite leaf sutra, opening his illusion breaker eyes again. He saw that behind the stone wall, where the earth-condensed flower was, the spatial cracks were rapidly rotating, causing the scarlet liquid to flow in a disorderly manner. It looked very strange, no different from what Xiaohua had seen before. Xiaohua restrained his anxiety and patiently watched. After the time it took for an incense stick to burn, the spatial crack suddenly slowed down, and the scarlet liquid suddenly began to rotate in a regular pattern. Just as Xiaohua's face revealed a happy expression, the scarlet liquid unexpectedly rotated into the shape of a channel, and this channel gradually expanded under the push of the spatial crack, until it was about the size of a table. Then it stopped. Xiaohua opened his illusion breaker eyes and looked at the passage that was formed one zhong away. He felt an indescribable sense of absurdity in his heart. This is a natural passage? Or was it cast by an almighty person? What was behind this passage? It said that there are spatial cracks outside this space, and no one dares to go out. Since such an opportunity is in front of me, how can I not go and take a look? Xiaohua quickly made a decision. Forming a hand seal, Xiaohua took a step forward and his entire body disappeared into the stone wall, heading towards the passage that had already taken shape. The distance of one zhang was covered in an instant. Xiaohua didn't dare to take the risk. He originally wanted to use the cloud-suppressing seal, but he was afraid that the power of the magic treasure would destroy the passage. After thinking for a moment, he clapped his hand, and the black iron needle quietly flew out. When Xiaohua's figure appeared from the stone wall, there was no scarlet thing in front of him. Instead, in front of him, there was a passage formed by a whirlwind that led straight to the distance. Oh, that scarlet thing is actually this whirlwind. No wonder people say that the wind in this place blows from the 9 heavens to the 9 underworlds. This wind is also strange. Xiaohua looked at the passage and thought to himself. The passage formed by the whirlwind was 1 zhang wide. Its periphery and surroundings were chaotic spatial cracks. Only the center of the passage, which was about 5 zhang wide, was a relatively stable place. Needless to say, if one wanted to fly through the passage, they could only go through the center. Xiaohua clapped his hand and held the tip of the devil's spear in his hand. He then controlled the black iron needle to fly in front of him and flew into the passage. The passage was very noisy, like thunder and tides. It shook Xiaohua's mind to the point that he almost fell out of the passage several times. Xiaohua was alarmed and immediately operated the Thunder Cleansing Sutra that he had no choice but to impart to it. Only then did he feel his ears and eyes become clear. Damn it, this passage isn't like it at all. Xiaohua flew for the time it takes for an incense stick to burn. He saw some light in front of him and knew that he had reached the end of the passage. He couldn't help but curse in his heart. Although there aren't any powerful restrictions, this natural sound is comparable to the 10,000 Thunder Valley's 10,000 Thunder Valley. Even ancestor Jin Qing's sound attack can't compare to it. Seeing that he had reached the end, Xiaohua released his divine sense. Io, this place, why is it so strange? When Xiaohua's divine sense reached the outside of the passage, he immediately felt a huge force pulling his divine sense downwards. He couldn't extend his divine sense further. Go! Xiaohua controlled the black iron needle. Unexpectedly, the moment the black iron needle rushed out of the passage, it was immediately attracted by an incomparably powerful force. Xiaohua's divine sense was unable to control it at all. With a pa sound, it fell to the ground and couldn't fly anymore. Xiaohua was greatly alarmed. He stopped at the edge of the passage and didn't dare to move forward. Chapter 1770. Xiaohua's figure stopped at the edge of the passageway, not daring to move forward. He tried to slowly release his divine sense and felt the suction force outside the passageway. Suddenly, he came to a realization. This seems to be magnetism, a kind of magnetism that can attract everything. Magnetism was something Xiaohua had read about in the ancient records of the Imperial Thunder Sect. He never thought he would encounter it here. Magnetism is also divided into 5 elements. Different magnetism has the strongest attraction force to different elements. It is said that the most powerful magnetism can attract all 5 elements in the world, unless something not in the 5 elements is not affected by it. But how can there be something not in the 5 elements in the world? Xiaohua thought to himself, the black iron needle should be of the metal element. The magnetism here can attract metal things. But other elements can also be attracted by it, just that the attraction force is not as strong as the metal element. And the magnetism here can even absorb divine sense. I'm afraid it is a bit strange. Xiaohua paused for a moment, then opened his delirium vision again. He saw that outside the scarlet tunnel, strands of earthy yellow light were falling down like rain. Oh, I understand now. Xiaohua suddenly realized the magnetism here is not only attractive to metal things, it is also attractive to earth element spiritual energy. Because of this, there is Zhongyao milk in this kind of place. Thinking of this, Xiaohua did not stay any longer and flew out of the tunnel. Before Xiaohua flew out of the tunnel, he first formed his heart technique into a cloud and circulated his magic power around his body, preparing to resist the magnetism force at any time. Who would have thought that when Xiao Hua flew out of the tunnel, only a kind of pressure similar to the one in the space just now pressed on his shoulder, far less heavy than he imagined. Strange, Xiao Hua was happy. Could it be that I am of the hidden fire element, this metal and earth element magnetism? Who? However, before Xiao Hua's smiling face could be seen, that smile froze on his face. Xiao Hua suddenly turned around, only to see a Tinzhong tall dark puppet had appeared behind him at some point in time and blocked the hurricane tunnel. The dark puppet was similar to a human. It had large hands and feet, especially on its large head. Its facial features were very similar to a human's, and it looked extremely ferocious. It seemed to have been specially made by the person who made it. Oh, Xiao Hua saw the dark puppet's body and already knew that this puppet was the puppet fragment he encountered when he entered the dark mystery. Could it be? This puppet also... Oh, I understand. This puppet has runes on it. It can resist the magnetism force here. Xiao Hua saw the strange runes on the puppet's body quickly flowing, faintly emitting a black light, and immediately understood. These puppets actually came out of ground. At this time, around Xiao Hua, 3 similar puppets drilled out from the ground and surrounded Xiao Hua in a shape. Damn it, they still want a gang fight, Xiao Hua said in his heart, and then he raised his voice and said, "This humble Taoist is Xiao Hua, the Imperial Lightning Sect, and I unintentionally intruded into this place. I wonder which senior has arrived first." Just as Xiao Hua's voice fell, the radiance on the bodies of the 4 3-meter-tall puppets gradually grew stronger, and they let out a rumbling sound like bees spreading their wings. They want to fight. Xiao Hua was furious. He slapped his hand and summoned the cloud-suppressing seal. However, just as the cloud-suppressing seal flew into the air, it was immediately pulled by a huge force. It let out a mournful cry and fell to the ground. Back! Xiao Hua was slightly shocked. He pointed his finger, and the cloud-suppressing seal was barely absorbed into his space. With a boom, the 4 puppets around Xiao Hua each waved their big fists and smashed toward Xiao Hua from all directions. It's a kind of formation. Seeing the fists of the 4 puppets coming from all directions, blocking the space around Xiao Hua immediately understood. Then, his figure fluttered and flew into the air. Pooh! When the 4 puppets saw Xiao Hua flying away, they followed him like shadows. They flew from all directions and attacked the top of Xiao Hua's head. Damn it, it's not over yet. Xiao Hua saw the 4 big fists and didn't know how powerful they were. He didn't dare to meet them head-on. He slapped his hand, and the devil hammer appeared in his hand, wanted to deal with them. In his opinion, although he couldn't use magic treasures, the devil hammer was a devil artifact. It shouldn't be affected by the magnetic force, right? Who knew that the devil hammer was originally heavy, and under the magnetic force's effect, it was even heavier. Xiao Hua's hand slipped, and he couldn't help but fall to the ground. Magic treasures can't work. Devil artifacts can't work, let alone artifacts and yellow talismans. Xiao Hua immediately understood the power of the magnetic force here. Fortunately, he wasn't affected by the magnetic force. Although he was trapped in the formation of the 4 puppets, with his martial skills, he wasn't in any danger. However, these 4 puppets are also very powerful. No matter where Xiao Hua flies to, they are able to surround Xiao Hua. And Xiao Hua's awakening lightning escape is greatly affected by the magnetic force. He is unable to break away from these 4 puppets. With a pa sound, Xiao Hua's fist collided with a puppet's fist. Xiao Hua felt a slight pain, but the puppet didn't feel it at all. It waved its fist and smashed it again. Xiao Hua had seen the materials used to refine these puppets before and knew that it was a foreign object. Using his own body to collide with them wasn't a wise move. The only one who would suffer would be himself. Forget it. These puppets are already so powerful. Moreover, under the magnetic force, I can't gain any advantage. If I wait for them to come out, I won't even have the chance to escape. Xiao Hua saw that the puppets were powerful and naturally thought of the puppet's master's power. He He was afraid that they weren't just chi refinement cultivators and unconsciously thought of retreating. However, just as he used the ethereal steps to dodge, a thought flashed through his mind. How am I stupid? Under the power of magnetism, all spells become illusory. One can only rely on their physical body or special runes to resist the power of magnetism. I'm not good at anything else, but I have martial skills and strength. Isn't that my strength? Finished thinking, Xiao Hua laughed loudly. His figure floated, and he didn't use any magic power. He only used the Big Dipper Divine Fist and the ethereal steps to tangle with the 4 puppets. Pa pa pa, sounds rang out in succession. Xiao Hua's fists and feet all landed on the puppets' bodies. Although they were all blocked by a black brilliance and couldn't cause any harm to the puppets, Xiao Hua understood that he should have grasped the initiative. That's right, doesn't this young master still have the Great Wisdom Sword? Xiao Hua punched out, and with a clap of his hand, the Great Wisdom Sword fell into his hand. Ha ha! Great kindness. It really is an object from beyond the heavens. Seeing that the Great Wisdom Sword was in his hand and wasn't affected by the magnetic force, Xiao Hua couldn't help but laugh loudly. Using his hand to grasp the sword embryo, the heaven-piercing staff technique was like a shadow that could topple mountains and overturn seas as it smashed down. The 4 puppets were admittedly powerful, but they couldn't compare to Xiao Hua. In just a short moment, they were beaten by Xiao Hua. And if it wasn't for Xiao Hua having other intentions in his heart, they would have been beaten to a pulp by Xiao Hua. However, just as Xiao Hua was about to win, from behind the 4 puppets, more than 10 puppets that were several times taller quietly drilled out from the ground. Chapter 1771. Oh my, there are still so many. Seeing another dozen or so puppets that were a bit bigger than the previous ones crawled out from the ground, Xiao Hua was not alarmed, but happy instead. His eyes curved into crescents as he looked at these puppets with interest, as if they were already in his bag. It was not that Xiao Hua was arrogant. After all, under such powerful metal and earth magnetism, any cultivator's ability would be reduced. As for Xiao Hua's current cultivation, yes, his cultivation was also affected, but wasn't Xiao Hua's martial skills exceedingly high? Not to mention a middle-stage foundation establishment cultivator, even a late-stage foundation establishment cultivator. Xiao Hua was confident that he could put up a fight. Of course, Xiao Hua could not understand the ability of a golden core cultivator, so he naturally would not consider it. And if there really was a golden core cultivator here, how could the Shanghua sect disciples outside of Ming Shi form a formation? The puppets in front of Xiao Hua were somewhat different from the previous 4 puppets. Not only were the runes on their bodies incomplete, but their bodies were also clearly damaged. It was obvious that they were damaged underground. It must be because the puppets above ground that were specifically responsible for blocking Xiao Hua's path could not block him. So these puppets were summoned. Moreover, among these dozen puppets, 30% were humanoid puppets, and the other 70% were all kinds of strange shapes. Some are like spiritual beasts, some are like birds, lions, tigers, and even centipedes. Divine power, centipede. Xiao Hua did not have the habit of using spiritual pets to attack, so he had long forgotten about this thing. Now that he saw a centipede puppet, he almost slapped his forehead. However, he immediately smiled bitterly. The magnetic force was so powerful that even his own magic power could not circulate. How could the divine power centipede fight? Roar, just as Xiao Hua's mind was spinning. The bird puppet actually let out a roar similar to a lion or tiger. It spread its wings and pounced toward Xiao Hua. Those 3 feet long wings flashed past like 2 rows of sharp swords in front of Xiao Hua's eyes. At the same time, this roar was like a signal to attack. All the puppets attacked, and only the lion and tiger puppet stood motionless in the distance. The first 4 puppets attacked from all directions. The next few humanoid puppets formed hand seals, and runes flowed around their bodies. Light condensed in their hands, and the centipede-like puppets actually slithered on the ground, attacking Xiao Hua. Ha ha ha, interesting. Xiao Hua's eyes lit up when he saw the puppets' various attacking methods. He beamed with joy. In his mind, the puppets were just like the puppets in his space, dull and wooden. He had never imagined that they could be refined to be so flexible. They were simply not inferior to a 10th layer chi refining cultivator. However, before Xiao Hua's laughter could land, two hands suddenly stretched out from the ground under Xiao Hua's feet and firmly grabbed his feet. Ouch! Xiao Hua was shocked. This attack was really out of his expectations. He originally wanted to use ethereal steps to dodge these attacks. But now he couldn't move his body, so how could he dodge? Swoosh! The bird puppet's wings first slashed down from the sky. The sharp sound of the wind clearly showed the power of these sharp blades. Xiao Hua didn't doubt that if he didn't have the protection of his magic power, his head would have been split in two by these wings. Humph! Xiao Hua waved his left hand, and the great wisdom heavy sword really blocked the space between the two wings. Ka-ka, two sounds rang out. The puppet's wings hit the sword embryo, but it didn't leave a single mark on the sword embryo. Xiao Hua's hand slightly shook, and the great wisdom heavy sword hit the puppet's back. The force was so heavy that the bird puppet's body flashed, and it fell from the sky like a real bird. At the same time, the hands that were tightly grabbing Xiao Hua's feet suddenly produced a great force. A force similar to magic power directly rushed into Xiao Hua's meridians. Is it that simple? Xiao Hua urged the dragon transformation secret art. His entire meridians shook like a dragon's body. That magic power simply couldn't enter his meridians. Come out! Xiao Hua supported himself with one foot on the ground and the other foot kicked up. On one hand, he blocked the centipede puppet's attack, and on the other, he separated the hands of the person on the ground. That person naturally also did his best to grab Xiao Hua's legs, but his great strength was only relative. Compared to Xiao Hua's bone-tempering divine power, it was still lacking by a lot. Ka-ka! It seemed to be the sound of the bones of the person on the ground moving. That person was clearly shocked by Xiao Hua's divine power. His two arms were pulled extremely far away. Only then did he wake up and quickly let go of one hand. The other hand, in a panic, clenched into a fist and directly smashed toward Xiao Hua's leg. How can this person also have such great strength? While Xiao Hua was astonished, the attacks of the four puppets had already closed in on him. Moreover, the spells of several humanoid puppets had already formed. As the puppets waved their hands, they actually attacked the place where Xiao Hua was about to dodge. Strange, why aren't these puppets' attacks affected by the magnetic force? Xiao Hua was slightly stunned. Moreover, these puppets seem to have been working together for a long time. They actually know where I'm going to dodge. Let's deal with the master of these puppets first. Xiao Hua's gaze swept over, and his entire body twisted in an extremely strange manner, as if his entire body was folded up. His back was facing the ground, and one of his hands caught that person's fist that was smashing towards his leg socket at lightning speed. Xiao Hua's movement was very sudden, and it was absolutely strange. He dodged all the attacks. The person hidden underground simply didn't think of it, and naturally didn't have time to dodge. Come out! Xiao Hua grabbed that person's hand. At first, he was stunned. It seemed to be somewhat ice-cold to the touch, quite different from an ordinary person's body. But he didn't have time to think too much. With a loud shout, he actually pulled that person out from underground. But when that person's real face was revealed, Xiao Hua couldn't help but be stunned. This person was actually also a puppet. However, this humanoid puppet was about the same size as a person. Its skin was slightly pale, and it was also wearing a Taoist robe. If it weren't for the fact that its facial features were somewhat stiff and the gaze in its eyes was somewhat lifeless, perhaps it would be the same as a real person. Taking advantage of Xiao Hua's shock, the humanoid puppet suddenly struggled and actually broke free from Xiao Hua's hand. Moreover, that humanoid puppet suddenly flew up, fluttering out of the encirclement of the other puppets, and landed on top of the liger puppet outside. Could it be that this is a puppet with a mind of its own? Xiao Hua's heart gave birth to an even more absurd feeling. His figure didn't straighten up, and instead flew out while sticking close to the ground. After breaking out of the encirclement of the puppets, it directly somersaulted, and stood upright in midair. You're an aura-refining cultivator. How come you're not afraid of the magnetic force? The humanoid puppet unexpectedly let out an astonished voice. This voice was mellow and smooth, and it wasn't as stiff as Xiao Hua imagined it to be. This young master is an aura-refining cultivator. What about you? Xiao Hua laughed involuntarily and asked that puppet with interest. Chapter 1772. Although there was no smile on the puppet's face, its laughter was very loud and clear. How could a brat at the peak of chi refinement like you know who I am? You're just a puppet refined by someone else. What cultivation are you talking about? Xiao Hua sneered. Puppet? The laughter was even louder, practically mocking. Ignorant brat. This is my divine sense possession technique. If my main body was here, I would have already killed you with one palm. Divine sense possession technique? Xiao Hua was slightly stunned. He didn't know anything about puppet techniques, so how could he know so much? He waved his hand and said, If you're a senior expert, please show yourself. Otherwise, what I's facing is just a puppet, so I can't be considered a senior. Brat, you're really stubborn. The puppet sneered. For you to be able to come here, I'm afraid you follow my tracks. And it should be those puppet fragments that were torn apart by the spatial cracks. Since you've received my favor, then return it to me now. While speaking, the runes around the puppet's body overflowed, and a faint green chi formed on the puppet's body, quickly gathering in the puppet's hand. Go! The puppet shouted, and a sword light like a flying sword flew out from its hand, stabbing towards Xiao Hua with incomparable speed. Why isn't your technique affected by the magnetic force? Xiao Hua was slightly startled, and while asking, his figure swayed in the air. That swing was like a hammer suspended in midair, seemingly slow, but actually swift. It looked very easy to dodge the sword light. If you tell me why you're not affected by the magnetic force, then I'll tell you the reason. The puppet's voice was also somewhat unexpected as it replied. Xiao Hua himself didn't know why he wasn't affected by the magnetic force, so how could he answer it? He shouted, It's impolite to come and go. Brandishing the great wisdom sword, he pounced toward the puppet from a strange angle with the heavenly staff technique. Here, the puppet wasn't nervous in the slightest, and with a wave of its hand, a sparkling small green shield appeared in its hand. It raised it very casually, blocking in front of the great wisdom sword. Xiao Hua's face didn't change in the slightest, but he was secretly delighted in his heart. When the great wisdom sword struck the small shield, a loud kacha sound rang out. The small light green shield was actually shattered into dozens of sparkling green fragments by the great wisdom sword. With a schwa sound, the fragments fell into the air. Io, you were born with divine strength? The puppet was slightly shocked, and there was a hint of delight in its voice. Or, are you a body cultivator? Hearing the puppet's delight, Xiao Hua felt a little uneasy in his heart. He rolled his eyes and said with a smile, Why are you asking so much? Hiding in the shadows can't be considered as open and above board. Open and above board. What year is it now? Why are you still talking to me about this? The puppet let out a hearty laugh and clapped its hand. A 3-inch-long azure sword appeared in its hand. With a wave of its hand, it pierced forward again. Why would Xiao Hua be afraid of this? His figure flickered, and he started to fight with him in the air with ease. As for those puppets from before, apart from the 4 humanoid puppets that were still standing in 4 different directions, surrounding Xiao Hua and that puppet, the other puppets once again sank into the ground and disappeared without a trace. In terms of close combat, if Xiao Hua claimed to be number 2, perhaps no one would dare to claim to be number 1. In merely the time it took to brew a cup of tea, Xiao Hua had already clearly figured out the puppet's background. Immediately after, Xiao Hua didn't hesitate. With 3 consecutive pa-pa-pa sounds, he forced the puppet's flying sword to collide head-on. The puppet's entire figure was shaken by Xiao Hua and fell back several zhang. Xiao Hua laughed loudly. His figure flew to the side of the puppet like a wisp of smoke. He waved his hand and shouted, Eat this young master's stick. The puppet lost its balance, but its left hand still raised the flying sword, wanting to block the great wisdom sword. With a loud paw sound, it was exactly as Xiao Hua had expected. Under the great wisdom sword, the flying sword simply didn't have the power to fight back and was immediately smashed into pieces. As for the puppet, it sped up its descent from the sky. Come, you! Xiao Hua's figure sped up again. In an instant, he swept to the puppet's side. He stretched out his hand and placed it precisely on the puppet's shoulder. With a thought, he actually put that puppet into his storage bag. Ha ha! Xiao Hua saw that his plan had succeeded and didn't hesitate any longer. His entire figure turned around and flew towards the passage of the hurricane. Xiao Hua's movements were truly fast and absolutely out of the expectations of bystanders. The four puppets surrounded him and simply didn't have time to react. They saw Xiao Hua sweep past the top of the puppet's head and use his hand to scoop it up. He even put that dumbfounded puppet into his storage bag, as if he hadn't had enough. Just as Xiao Hua's figure flew in front of the passage and was about to sweep in, a similarly light cyan brilliance flew out from the ground in front of the passage. It was several times faster than the flying sword in the puppet's hand and stabbed towards Xiao Hua's leg. This is bad. Xiao Hua saw the cyan flying sword stab out and secretly complained in his heart. He waved the great wisdom sword in his hand. With a ka sound, the two swords collided. However, that flying sword only slanted forward and didn't shatter like Xiao Hua expected. Xiao Hua saw that the flying sword was sent flying, but his figure still didn't stop and still rushed towards the passage. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. A series of sounds, four light, cyan flying swords suddenly appeared in front of Xiao Hua's eyes. Like weaving a net, they shuttled back and forth in midair, blocking Xiao Hua in midair. This! Xiao Hua's eyes narrowed slightly. Looking at the five flying swords cruising in midair, the expression on his face was extremely unsightly. Ah, what a bold brat! A familiar voice came from behind Xiao Hua. It was the voice that came from the puppet just now. Xiao Hua suddenly turned around, only to see a thin old man wearing a green Taoist robe standing about 10 meters behind him. His hair was a bit white, and his face was thin. There was a mocking expression on his face as he stood there very indifferently. Middle stage foundation establishment. Xiao Hua looked at the old man's cultivation, and the astonishment on his face disappeared in a flash. What a powerful brat! The old man looked at Xiao Hua with interest and sneered. You're called Xiao Hua? Are you a disciple of the Imperial Thunder Sect? That's right. Xiao Hua's heart trembled. It turned out that this cultivator had already noticed him and remembered the name he reported when he entered this place. He hurriedly cupped his hands and said, Senior, which sect are you from? Please bestow a name. How can I tell you my name so easily? The old man sneered. I didn't expect that there was a body cultivator among the Imperial Thunder Sect's disciples, and that you even have the habit of stealing. Hee, if I didn't set up this Azure Essence sword formation in advance. I'm afraid you'd have run away long ago, right? Azure Essence sword formation? Xiao Hua was slightly dazed. Looking around, he saw several flying swords cruising in midair and laughed bitterly. This cultivator didn't show himself all along and only relied on a puppet to fight with him. He thought that the other party was looking for Zhong Yao Lu and didn't care about him. Who knew that the other party actually set up a sword formation near the passage and waited for him to walk into the trap. Sword formation, that was a type of formation among flying swords. Once trapped, it wasn't just one or two flying sword alone. Xiao Hua had only heard of it. What's wrong? Scared. Seeing Xiao Hua's expression change, the cultivator sneered. Do you think it's so easy to take away my puppet? Quickly take out the puppet, and I can still consider sparing your life. Otherwise, when I capture you, the pain of soul searching isn't something that you can escape from just by begging for mercy. Humph! Seeing the cultivator mention the puppet, Xiao Hua's heart shook, and he sneered. This isn't Senior's place. I just came to take a look. Why would you kill me like this? Your puppet isn't a match for me, so it naturally belongs to me. If Senior captures me, I'll immediately destroy that puppet before I'm captured. Oomph. A trace of fierceness flashed through the cultivator's eyes, and a sense of regret arose in his heart. He attached great importance to this puppet of his and was very confident in it. He simply didn't expect that Xiao Hua would be able to easily defeat the puppet and even take it away. How about it, Senior? If you let me go, I'll swear a blood oath that when I pass through the passage behind me, I'll definitely release this puppet. Xiao Hua was secretly delighted in his heart and said in a low voice, In my hands, in my sword formation, you don't have the power to fight back. The old man sneered, and with a clap of his hand, a foundation establishment pressure pressed down on Xiao Hua. Moreover, that sword technique was constantly being shot out from his hands. The flying swords that were as docile as fish immediately became ferocious and flew towards Xiao Hua from all directions. Roar! Xiao Hua had long been paying attention to the old man's pressure. This was also the only thing he was afraid of. Seeing that the pressure wasn't affected by the magnetic force, he sighed in his heart. His mighty Vajra Dharma body shook and broke free from his body. True spirit bloodline? True spirit Dharma body? Seeing Xiao Hua's Dharma body, the old man was stunned and blurted out, True spirit bloodline? True spirit Dharma body? Xiao Hua was slightly taken aback, but the current situation was urgent, and he didn't feel like answering. The Vajra Dharma body appeared and blocked the old man's foundation establishment pressure. Go! The old man pointed with his hand, and several flying swords flashed with light blue sword light and stabbed toward Xiao Hua. At the same time, he laughed nastily. Since it's the legendary true spirit bloodline, that's even better. I'll extract the true blood from your bloodline and give it to my puppet to use. It's definitely more effective than some Zhongyao milk. Do you think I'm afraid of you? Xiao Hua steeled his heart. The Dharma body waved its fists and struck towards the flying swords, while he swung the great wisdom sword and directly attacked the old man. How can you guess the divine ability of a foundation establishment cultivator? The old man chuckled and rubbed his hands. The flying swords dodged the Dharma body's fists and stabbed towards Xiao Hua one after another. Moreover, a blue brilliance appeared around his body and gradually condensed into an oval-shaped light shield. It was at least 3 inches thick and blocked in front of the great wisdom sword. Go! Xiao Hua knew that this light shield was condensed from a foundation establishment cultivator's true essence. Although his great wisdom sword could block it, it probably couldn't break it. Moreover, several biting cold flying swords were already close to him. If he didn't counterattack, his life would be in danger. Thus, Xiao Hua opened his mouth, and the green and red executioner dream also flew out. Chapter 1773. Xiao Hua didn't dare to hold back anymore. He opened his mouth, and the green and red dream executioner flew out. The dream executioner was refined using Tai green qi, which was born from Xiantian gold qi. As soon as it flew out, a tyrannical magnetic force appeared from the ground, pulling the dream executioner down. Rise! The Buddhist Sarira outside, Xiao Hua's Naiwan palace, emitted a faint Buddhist light. The Buddhist sense was activated with all its might, controlling the dream executioner. With a swoosh, the dream executioner's sword tip tilted and immediately split into 2. Then 2, 4, and in the blink of an eye, the dream executioner turned into 8 identical flying swords. 5 of them flew towards the cultivator's flying sword, while the other 3 whistled and pierced towards the cultivator's forehead. Flying sword? The cultivator was stunned and said in shock, When did the Imperial Thunder Sect's disciples learn the sword cultivator's flying sword? This flying sword is strange. The dream executioner's boundless negative karma power also had a strong effect on foundation establishment cultivators. That cultivator was obviously plagued by negative karma, and he could clearly feel the dream executioner's deterrence. I'll let you have a taste of Ai's methods. Xiao Hua saw that the dream executioner was effective, and a cold smile appeared on his face. He activated his Buddhist sense to resist the magnetic force while fighting against the cultivator's green essence sword array. Just a small trick. Although the cultivator said this, he didn't dare to be negligent. With a wave of his hand, not only did the 3 puppets beside him pounce over, the several strange puppets that were previously buried in the ground also jumped out and attacked Xiao Hua from different directions. Damn it, do you still want face? Why are you ganging up on me? Xiao Hua cursed. No matter what, you're still a Foundation establishment senior. Taking your life is the right way. The cultivator didn't feel the slightest shame. He clapped his hand and took out a foot-long bamboo covered in green runes. He activated his magic power, and the bamboo emitted a faint light and stopped above the cultivator's head. Seeing the cultivator take out another magic tool, Xiao Hua's gaze swept over, and he was shocked. However, he didn't have time to care. The Vajra Dharma body faced the 3 human-shaped puppets, the 5 flying swords tangled with the green essence sword array, and the 3 flying swords fighting against the strange puppets. Thanks to Xiao Hua's several months of training, he could divide the Dream Executioner into 8 swords and split his attention to control the flying swords. But because of this, he couldn't use the Great Wisdom Heavy Sword Array. The magnetic force here was very strong. Xiao Hua used all his strength to urge his Buddhist sense to control the Dream Executioner. Although it was very strenuous, it was extremely beneficial to the tempering of his Buddhist sense. It was far more effective than his own aimless cultivation. Moreover, the cultivator's green essence sword array was also quite marvelous. Xiao Hua's 5 swords were at a disadvantage at first, but after the time it took to eat a meal, not only did Xiao Hua finally find some traces of the sword array, he also became more proficient in controlling the Dream Executioner. He actually gradually turned the situation around and was able to tie with the green essence sword array. The cultivator, standing in the distance, looked at Xiao Hua's divine bravery. At first, he was shocked, then angry, but gradually, joy appeared on his face. Roar! Xiao Hua's Vajradharma body roared angrily. He suddenly waved his left fist, which actually had the flavor of the Big Dipper Divine Fist. With a bang, it smashed into the centipede puppet's back. With a bang, the light on the puppet's back flickered. Then, the puppet's joints were broken inch by the Dharma body and scattered on the ground. Hiss! That cultivator sucked in a breath of cold air, his heart slightly aching. Pay attention, fellow Taoist Xiao. That cultivator pointed his finger. The bamboo stopped in midair, flew up, and attacked Xiao Hua's head. Xiao Hua was greatly alarmed. He simply didn't think about why that cultivator would warn him. While he was busy, he took the opportunity to swing the Great Wisdom Sword in his hand forward. With a boom, it actually blocked the green light scattered by the bamboo. Xiao Hua's hand, however, sank. The Great Wisdom Sword dropped half a foot. Return. Taking advantage of Xiao Hua's distraction, that cultivator waved his hand. 5 flying swords flew in front of Xiao Hua. They spun a few times in midair and flew to Xiao Hua's side, blocking him from the passage. Stop! That cultivator chanted an incantation. The several puppets also stopped and returned to their original positions. Seeing that the cultivator took the initiative to withdraw, Xiao Hua's heart relaxed. He opened his mouth, and the Dream Execution turned into a sword light and flew back into his mouth, a bit crookedly. To be honest, the magnetic force here affected the flying swords too much. Although Xiao Hua had the Buddha Saraira, if he fought for another hour, Xiao Hua definitely wouldn't be able to hold on. After retrieving the Dream Execution, Xiao Hua slanted his Great Wisdom Sword. He didn't dare to withdraw the Dharma body outside his body. His gaze swept over the bamboo that flew back to the cultivator's head, and he sneered, "Senior, why did you stop? Don't you want Junior's true spirit bloodline? Hee, don't be complacent, brat. I just saw that you have some use and want to make a deal with you." That cultivator said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes, "If you can help me get the Earth Crystal Yao Milk, what would I want your true spirit bloodline for?" Earth Crystal Yao Milk. Xiao Hua was stunned. His eyes turned a few times, and he asked curiously, "Didn't want to find Zhong Yao Milk?" I wanted to find Zhongyao milk before, but since I met you, didn't the heavens send you here? Why would I want Zhongyao milk? The cultivator said with a smile. What is this earth crystal Yao milk? If you don't tell me clearly, I definitely won't make a deal with you. Xiao Hua shook his head like a rattle drum. What a joke. How could he dare to take something that even a foundation establishment cultivator couldn't get? Take out this old man's puppet, and this old man will naturally tell you. The cultivator pointed with his hand and said, Hee, senior, that puppet is now surnamed Xiao. How could Junior take out so easily? Xiao Hua's smile was like a flower, and he cupped his hands and said, Moreover, this Junior still doesn't know Senior's origin. How could I dare to make a deal with Senior? That's true. This old man was a bit careless. That cultivator also squinted his eyes and smiled. This old man is the founder of the Great Bamboo Sect, Emo Qingyan. Great Bamboo Sect? Founder? Xiao Hua was stunned. He looked at the puppet at the side and said, Isn't Senior from the puppet sect? Hearing Xiao Hua mention the puppet sect, Emo Qingyuan's face turned cold. As expected of a famous sect in the country of Shi, you even know of the puppet sect in the country of Ming. Unfortunately, the current Xiaoyu continent only has the Great Bamboo Sect, and no longer has the puppet sect. Great Bamboo Sect. Xiao Hua slightly nodded and pointed with his finger. Could it be this bamboo is what Senior relied on to come to this magnetic land? Yeah, you actually thought of it? Mo Qingyuan's face was astonished, and he asked back, Then why aren't you affected by the magnetic force? What do you think? Xiao Hua didn't answer and also asked back. Mo Qingyuan's expression slightly changed, but it quickly returned to normal and said, Since you already guessed it, this old man won't hide it. This old man obtained this kuragi bamboo in the northernmost desert of the Xiaoyu continent. It's an innate wood artifact, and it's not affected by the magnetic force of metal and earth here. These puppets and Senior's flying sword, they were also refined from kuragi bamboo, right? Xiao Hua said with a smile. Yes, that's right. Mo Qingyuan nodded and said, Great, this Junior has been longing for the refining method of puppets for a long time. Xiao Hua smacked his lips and said very embarrassedly, What? The refining method of puppets? Mo Qingyuan's expression changed drastically, and he waved his hand. Impossible. This old man absolutely won't give it to you. Xiao Hua's face immediately changed into a pained expression, and he spread out his hands. Io, this is troublesome. This Junior originally wanted to part with it and return this puppet to Senior under the circumstances of peeking into the art of puppets. Moreover, this Junior also planned to make a deal with Senior. This Junior still has to see how to get out. As he spoke, he looked at the hurricane passage in the distance. Mo Qingyuan stared at Xiao Hua, and after a long while, he sneered, Xiao Hua, you've got guts, actually daring to bargain with this old man. Well, Xiao Hua's Vajradharma body stretched deeply, and his main body said, This Junior is just stating facts. I dare not threaten Senior. Isn't it just a true spirit bloodline? What's so great about it? Mo Qingyuan glanced at the Vajradharma body that was dozens of feet long and sneered. Seeing that your Dharma body is incomplete, I know that your bloodline is impure, and I don't know what true spirit your bloodline belongs to. Although it's quite similar to the sky ape, why does it look so ugly? Xiao Hua frowned and said very sincerely, This Junior also doesn't know. Before joining the Imperial Thunder sect, I obtained an incomplete cultivation method from the ancestral hall in the clan, and this thing appeared as I was practicing. If Senior knows, can you enlighten me? Of course I can tell you, but this is my puppet. Oh, then there's no need to trouble Senior. Xiao Hua shook his head and said, Since this Junior is now a disciple of the Imperial Thunder sect, there's no need to talk about the bloodline from before. All right. Mo Qingyuan gritted his teeth and said, Since you don't want to know, this old man won't tell you either. However, it's impossible for you to obtain the complete art of puppetry. This old man can only give you the most basic and allow you to refine a simple puppet. Xiao Hua was overjoyed in his heart, but his expression didn't change, and he shook his head and said, That won't do. This Junior wants to refine a puppet that can do battle. Since Senior isn't willing, then this Junior will use Senior's puppet. Oomph. Dream on. This old man's puppet has my divine sense attached to it. So how can you use it? You just have to take out the puppet from your storage pouch, and it'll attack you right away. Mo Qingyan roared with laughter. This is already my greatest concession. If you don't agree, then this old man will kill you on the spot, even if I have to give up the puppet. As he spoke, he pointed with his hand, and the bamboo flew over again. All right. Xiaohua glanced at the bamboo and could only sigh. I'll do as Senior says. Great. Mo Qingyan clapped his hand and took out a green jade slip, and he said, Take out the puppet, and we'll exchange it together. Xiaohua immediately shook his head when he heard this and said, Don't, Senior. In this Junior's opinion, let's wait until we're out of the hurricane passage. In here, this Junior is afraid. Mo Qingyan's teeth creaked as he said coldly, Could it be that you're not afraid of me after arriving in the netherworld? Senior is a foundation establishment cultivator. How can this Junior not be afraid? This Junior has already thought it through. Before leaving this spatial rift, I'll have to ask Senior to make a blood oath. Xiaohua said very calmly. Chapter 1774. How dare you? Mo Qingyan couldn't bear it any longer. He pointed at the bamboo in the air and shouted angrily, Xiaohua, you've gone too far. I'll let you have a taste of my flying wood dragon chopper. With a whoosh, the bamboo suddenly shrunk until it was only 3 inches long. It flashed with an unusual green light in the air and actually transformed into a small dragon, pouncing towards Xiaohua. Humph, Senior is really turning hostile. Xiaohua sneered and patted his forehead. The cloud-suppressing seal flew out of his body in a crooked manner, releasing an earthy yellow light that protected Xiaohua's entire body. Magic treasure? You actually have a magic treasure? Mo Qingyan's expression changed greatly. He pointed his finger, and the flying wood dragon chopper stopped in midair. He then carefully looked at the cloud-suppressing seal and sneered. This magic treasure of yours is precisely affected by the magnetic force. With your chi-refining magic power, how long do you think you can last? Ha ha! Xiaohua laughed loudly and said, How long? Junior has never thought about how long. As long as Junior can't see any hope, Junior's storage pouch will immediately explode. Everything in it, such as spirit stones, medicinal pills, and those puppets that already have the surname Xiao, will vanish like smoke before I die. Ha! Mo Qingyan pointed at the wooden dragon chopper, and the chopper turned back into bamboo and flew back into his hand. He said with a smile, Fellow Taoist Xiao, I just wanted to show you my skills and let you know that cooperating with me will definitely bring you benefits. I don't mean anything else. Fellow Taoist, don't misunderstand. I won't. Xiaohua also smiled. He opened his mouth, and the cloud-suppressing seal shrank again. Seeing that Xiaohua also had many methods, Mo Qingyan suddenly felt helpless. It wasn't that he couldn't kill Xiaohua. After all, he was a foundation establishment cultivator. How could he not have a backup plan? However, that human-shaped puppet was really important to him. Otherwise, he wouldn't have taken such a huge risk to come here and find Zhong Yao Milk to cast a body for the puppet. However, Mo Qingyan wasn't confident in his ability to kill Xiaohua with a single strike. If Xiaohua were to be infuriated and destroy the puppet, then his painstaking efforts of a few tens of years would be wasted. Moreover, he would lose his fortuitous encounters in the future as well. Besides, most importantly, with the secret that Xiaohua wasn't afraid of the magnetic power, Jihao would be able to rely on Xiaohua to get the Earth Crystal Yao Milk, instead of the Zhong Crystal Yao Milk as he had thought. Although Zhong Yao Milk was useful for the casting of puppets, it was still not enough. However, it was useless for his own cultivation. Forget it. If you knew this would happen, you wouldn't have acted in the first place. When he thought about the benefits of obtaining the Earth Crystal Yao Milk, and thought about how he'd actually allowed the puppet to face the enemy while he set up the sword formation, Mo Qingyan sighed in his heart. He withdrew his hand and said, Since fellow Taoist Xiao doesn't dare to believe me, then I'll take this jade slip first. I'll make an exchange with fellow Taoist after I obtain the earth crystal Yao milk. Great. Xiao Hua clapped his hands and said, Senior is indeed a good person who cares about the younger generation. A good person? Mo Qingyuan sneered. It was precisely because he saw that Xiao Hua was actually unaffected by the magnetic power that he wanted to set up the sword formation to prevent Xiao Hua from escaping. How could Xiao Hua be considered a good person if he was able to control Xiao Hua in one go and help him find the earth crystal Yao milk? Oh, I've overlooked this. When he thought of the sword formation, Mo Qingyuan suddenly cried out involuntarily and said to himself, the Azure Essence sword technique I'm cultivating promotes divine sense, and that's why I'm able to set up a sword formation and control 5 flying swords at the middle stage of the Foundation Establishment realm. But Xiao Hua is only a cultivator at the peak of the Qi refinement realm. How could he control 8 flying swords? Moreover, he fought my Azure Essence sword formation to a draw. His divine sense is so powerful. How could he possibly be a Qi refinement cultivator? Instantly, a trace of astonishment flashed through Mo Qingyuan's eyes, and the gaze he looked at Xiao Hua with was different. He'd already understood now that even if he used his final trump card, he might not be able to kill Xiao Hua as he'd thought. Perhaps the more Mo Qingyuan thought about it, the more he felt that stopping was the right choice. Moreover, when he swept Xiao Hua with his divine sense once more, he confirmed that Xiao Hua was only a Qi refinement cultivator. Xiao Hua felt Mo Qingyuan's gaze on him, so he raised his eyes and smiled. What? Is there something you're worried about, Senior Mo? There's nothing to be worried about. The more powerful fellow Taoist Xiao is, the more likely we'll be able to obtain the earth crystal Yao milk. Why would I be worried? Mo Qingyuan said with a fake smile. That's good. Xiao Hua nodded. Then, Senior, please tell this junior how to obtain the earth crystal Yao milk. Mo Qingyuan waved his hand, and 3 human-shaped puppets walked to the side of the hurricane tunnel. Their figures sank into the ground, and then he performed a few hand seals to place the remaining puppets near the tunnel. Xiao Hua glanced at them and pretended not to see them. He knew that Mo Qingyuan's actions were mainly to prevent others from entering. As for whether it was to prevent him from escaping, he didn't care. After everything was arranged, Mo Qingyuan descended and said with a smile, I'll naturally tell fellow Taoist Xiao how to obtain the earth crystal Yao milk later. Before I tell fellow Taoist, shouldn't we discuss how to distribute the earth crystal Yao milk first? Although Xiao Hua didn't know where the earth crystal Yao milk was, he already knew that Mo Qingyuan couldn't obtain it himself because of the magnetic force. Xiao Hua wasn't affected by the magnetic force, so he could only obtain the earth crystal Yao milk himself. Since he could only obtain it himself, Mo Qingyuan certainly wouldn't feel at ease. Senior Mo, how do you think we should distribute it? Xiao Hua asked. Mo Qingyuan pondered for a while, then raised his head and said, I only want 3 drops. No matter how many drops there are, they'll all belong to fellow Taoist Xiao. Senior Mo, you won't lose money by saying that. Xiao Hua's expression didn't change. He smiled and said, I know what the Zhong Yao milk is, and I only want 1 drop. The earth crystal Yao milk is naturally much more precious than the Zhong Yao milk. Senior, you asked for 3 drops. What if I only get 1 drop? Or 2 drops? Or only 3 drops? Wouldn't this junior's efforts be in vain? But what if you get 10 drops? Mo Qingyuan asked. Moreover, only I know the location of the earth crystal Yao milk. I found it using a secret technique. If you go and look for it, I'm afraid you won't be able to find it even after a long time. Not necessarily. Xiao Hua smiled and said, Senior Mo, how do you know that I don't have the secret technique of the Thunder Control sect? Senior, don't forget how I got here. Mo Qingyuan's eyes flickered. He thought for a while and said, How about this? My bottom line is 2 drops. If you give me 2 drops, you'll have to give me 3 drops of the Zhong Yao milk. As for the rest, I don't care how many drops you get. Seeing that Mo Qingyuan only said how many drops he would get and didn't mention how to distribute them according to the ratio, Xiaohua already knew how precious the earth crystal Yao milk was. It would be good if he could get even one drop. Xiaohua also began to mutter to himself. If you like this work, you're welcome to vote for it at Qidian. Come. Chapter 1775. Xiaohua's purpose in coming to the netherworld was only the Zhongyao milk. Moreover, the Zhongyao milk was useful to lightning cultivators, but it might not be useful to Xiaohua. After all, the Zhongyao milk was only used to temper the body. As for the earth crystal Yao milk, it seemed that if Xiaohua didn't agree to Mo Qingyuan's conditions, Mo Qingyuan would definitely not tell him what it was or how to use it. Of course, Xiaohua could choose not to agree, and then he and Mo Qingyuan could only meet in battle. Fighting a life-and-death battle with a middle-stage foundation establishment cultivator wasn't a wise choice for Xiaohua, who was a qi refiner, especially under the circumstances where there was no special reason. Fine, then I'll bear with it. Xiaohua made up his mind and said with a smile, since Senior needs the earth crystal Yao milk like this, then I'll take a step back as well. I can only guarantee to give Senior one drop. If there's only one drop, then I'll give it to Senior. If there are 2 drops, then I'll be so bold as to keep 1 drop. This, Mo Qingyan was overjoyed in his heart, but he was hesitant on the surface and said, 1 drop isn't enough for me. After that, Mo Qingyuan had a resolute expression as he gritted his teeth and said, all right, I'll do as fellow Taoist Xiao says. However, I'll take 5 drops of the Zhongyao milk. No, Xiaohua shook his head like a rattle drum. Senior got the earth crystal Yao milk first. Then I'll take 4 drops of the Zhongyao milk first. You? Why do you want 4 drops? Mo Qingyuan was stunned and said curiously, fellow Taoist, you don't know the power of the Zhongyao milk, right? Ordinary cultivators only need 1 drop to temper their body. Junior can at least leave 3 drops as a gift. Xiaohua rolled his eyes at him. Fine. Mo Qingyuan once again said with a pained expression, since fellow Taoist Xiao wants 4 drops, then why don't we split it 50-50? Ha ha ha. Senior Mo. Xiaohua clapped and said, Senior, could it be that you really think I'm an idiot? Why didn't you split the earth crystal Yao milk 50-50 earlier? You only thought of splitting it 50-50 after getting the Zhongyao milk? There's no need to talk about the earth crystal Yao milk. You and I have already agreed. Mo Qingyuan said in all seriousness. At this moment, we're discussing the Zhongyao milk. How about this? Let's split it 40-60. You get 60%, and I get 40%. I'm sorry, Senior. Junior's bottom line is 70%. Junior gets 70%. Senior gets 30%. Xiaohua said without hesitation. Mo Qingyuan stared at Xiaohua, an indescribable meaning in his eyes. After a long while, he nodded and said, since that's the case, we'll do as you say. Swear an oath of your heart. Senior, you don't have to be idle. Please make a heart oath as well. After exiting the passageway, you can't attack me within the netherworld. Xiaohua immediately said. All right. Mo Qingyuan agreed. He looked at Xiaohua and made an oath. He also made an oath. Senior, you can now tell me the difference between earth crystal Yao milk and Zhongyao milk. Xiaohua said with a smile. Don't wait for me to take the wrong one. I don't have enough time to wait. All right, come with me. Mo Qingyuan nodded and formed a seal. His entire body gradually sank into the ground. It was the 5 elements escape technique. Xiaohua clapped his hands and took out an earth escape talisman. He put on himself and also followed Mo Qingyuan into the ground. There were also space cracks underground in this space. Beside the cracks, there were some puppet fragments. Obviously, they were left behind by Mo Qingyuan when he drove the puppet to explore the way. As for Mo Qingyuan, although he was very familiar with the path, he was still very careful. After taking a few steps, he would stop and observe for a while before moving again. As he walked, he explained the difference between Zhongyao milk and earth crystal Yao milk. Zhongyao milk was the condensation of earth element spiritual energy. It should be very easy to obtain in this space filled with magnetic force. As for earth crystal Yao milk, it was a treasure formed by Zhong Yao milk condensing into earth crystals under the effect of magnetic force. Isn't this a fire essence flame crystal? Xiao Hua suddenly realized and thought to himself. It's just that this is earth element spiritual energy, and the fire essence flame crystal is fire element spiritual energy. Of course, because of magnetic force, Zhong Yao milk is only on the surface of the magnetic stone, while earth crystal Yao milk is in the center of the magnetic stone. Mo Qingyuan said casually after explaining the difference between the two. What? And in the center of the metal earth magnetic stone? Xiao Hua stopped and waved his hand. Senior Mo, why didn't you say this earlier? Although I have the Earth Escape Talisman and can get close to the metal Earth Magnetic Stone, it's impossible for me to enter the metal Earth Magnetic Stone. If this old man didn't make any preparations, I'm afraid you'll think I'm a freeloader. Mo Qingyuan sneered and landed in a pitch-black cave. The cave was pathetically small, only 10 feet wide. The further one went, the lower the cave became. I wouldn't dare. I'm just asking. As Xiao Hua spoke, he took out the bright flower stone. As soon as the bright flower stone was taken out of the storage bag, a huge force pulled the bright flower stone. Xiao Hua couldn't control it all. The bright flower stone flew out of his hand and into the cave. This place is close to the metal earth magnetic stone. Nothing with metal earth can escape. Can't you see that even this old man can't resist it? You still took out the bright flower stone? Mo Qingyuan mocked. Xiao Hua looked up. Indeed, there was a faint green light flashing around Mo Qingyuan's body. It was obvious that he was using some kind of secret technique to resist the metal earth magnetic stone. This old man has never heard of a secret technique that is not affected by the metal earth magnetic stone at all. Mo Qingyuan looked at Xiao Hua's effortless appearance and said enviously, "This old man has planned for many years to use the puppets refined by Karaki bamboo to resist the metal earth magnetic stone. Unfortunately, even if it's a Xiantianwood item, it's still one of the 5 elements. It's also affected by the metal earth magnetic stone. This old man has already lost many puppets here." Xiao Hua kept his mouth shut and didn't reveal a single word. If this old man didn't cast a spell here, how could you succeed? Mo Qingyuan was still worried about his puppets and said fiercely, this young master isn't going to argue with you." Xiao Hua cursed inwardly and didn't reply. Mo Qingyuan was bored and pointed with his finger. The metal earth magnetic stone should still be inside, or it might still be below. This old man can't enter with my main body, so I only sent my puppets over to take a look. I can't give you any specific pointers. However, according to this old man's speculation, there should be a few drops of Zhongyao milk on the surface of the metal earth magnetic stone. However, it's hard to say whether there are any drops of Zhongyao milk. After all, Zhongyao milk is formed on the surface of the metal earth magnetic stone, and it will be quickly sucked in by the powerful metal earth magnetic stone. Xiao Hua's expression became slightly unsightly when he heard this. He finally understood why Mo Qingyuan wanted to split the spoils with him. However, there will definitely be earth crystal Yao milk within the metal earth magnetic stone. Mo Qingyuan ignored Xiao Hua's expression and said to himself. Moreover, as he spoke, he clapped his hand and took out a palm-sized bamboo slip. There were faint green runes on it, and under the effect of the metal earth magnetic stone, it slightly rippled with a faint brilliance. Mo Qingyuan passed the bamboo slip to Xiao Hua and said, "This is a talisman that this old man refined. The method of using it is as follows." As he spoke, he transmitted the method of activating the talisman and how to use it to Xiao Hua. When Xiao Hua heard this, he closed his eyes and pondered for a while. He felt that there was nothing wrong with it and nodded. "This junior understands. Senior, please listen to the good news again." "Wait." Mo Qingyuan's expression was slightly strange, and he hurriedly said, "This old man still has something to say." "What else?" Xiao Hua faintly felt that something was wrong. This talisman can only penetrate 1 foot into the metal earth magnetic stone. I'm afraid it can't penetrate even an inch further. Fellow Taoist Xiao, you still have to examine it carefully. Choosing the right place is the most important. What? Xiaohua didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He finally understood why Imo Qingyuan only wanted one drop of earth crystal Yao milk. The metal earth magnetic stone was so strong here. Who knew how strong the metal earth magnetic stone was? Who could be confident of finding the earth crystal Yao milk within 1 foot? Senior Imo, Xiaohua speechlessly shook his head and said helplessly, "This kid, I'm afraid that even if he works until the end, he won't be able to get even 1 drop of Zhongyao milk. If this old man didn't have this talisman, you wouldn't even have the chance to get the earth crystal Yao milk." Imo Qingyan said disapprovingly, "Yes, and this talisman also has a time limit. As for how long it will last, it has something to do with the strength of the metal earth magnetic stone. This old man can't make wild guesses. However, it won't last more than the time it takes to brew a cup of tea." Sigh, Senior Mo, forget it. Xiaohua wanted to say something, but when the words reached his mouth, he swallowed them back down. What could he say? He had already made a hard oath. "This junior will leave now." "Yes, it's in that direction." Imo Qingyuan pointed his finger and nodded. Seeing Xiaohua's figure slowly disappear into the distance, Imo Qingyuan's face was filled with extreme shock. The faint green light around his body flickered rapidly, as if it was about to lose its effect. He didn't dare to delay any longer and hurriedly formed a hand seal. His figure sank into the ground and disappeared. Xiaohua slowly walked towards the front of the cave. After walking for a while, he turned a corner and there was no road ahead. This was also the farthest place that Imo Qingyuan said the puppets had been. At that corner, there were actually many puppets. These puppets were somewhat broken, but most of them were complete. The black light on their bodies had already disappeared, revealing their slightly green bodies. All of them were tightly pressed against the stone wall in the distance. They were probably attracted by the strong metal earth magnetic stone and were unable to move. In the end, they used up all their spirit stones and became useless. Haha, great. Even if I can't get the earth crystal Yao milk, this trip was not in vain. When Xiaohua saw this, he was overjoyed. He walked over and used all his strength to pick up these puppets and put them into the space one by one. After Xiaohua finished putting away the puppets, he walked forward for a while and reached the end of the cave. There was no other way. It seemed that he had to use the earth escape technique again. "Sigh, this is nothing." Xiaohua smiled bitterly. After thinking for a while, he activated his Buddha's sense and opened his delusion breaker Dharma eye. Ouch! When the surrounding scene was reflected in his Dharma eye, Xiaohua couldn't help but cry out in surprise. He was stunned on the spot. Chapter 1776. How gorgeous, how spectacular, and how profound was this scene. The strands of brown light intertwined with the strands of gold light, and fell from the sky like thin lines of rain. The strangest thing was that these strands of light actually formed an arc shape and beautifully converged at a place far away from Xiaohua's feet. And at the place where the strands of light converged, it was like an oval chicken egg. The gold and brown light intertwined with each other, but they were also clearly separated and slowly rotated. The trajectory of the rotation actually had a hint of the heavenly Tao. This oval shape should be the metal earth magnetic field. Xiaohua muttered to himself, "But where is the earth crystal Yao milk?" Looking at the left side of the metal earth magnetic field, there were many scarlet things firmly entangling it. That should be the netherworld wind. Humph. Not to mention that Imo Qingyuan can't get close. Even if he's like this young master, unaffected by the magnetic force, and can reach here, he still can't find the location of the metal earth magnetic field. Xiaohua's heart was filled with pride. Xiaohua looked for a long time again, and finally saw a very hidden gap between the scarlet things. After pondering for a long time, he formed a seal with his hand, and very carefully entered the mountain rocks. Then he passed through the gap between the netherworld wind and arrived at a huge space. A space surrounded by the netherworld wind. Xiao Hua's illusion breaker, I couldn't completely see how big this space was, but Xiao Hua could see that there was a gap of several zhang between the netherworld wind and the metal earth magnetic field, and he was currently standing in this gap. This gap was filled with dense metal, earth, spiritual qi. Perhaps it was because the spiritual qi was too dense that it was able to block the netherworld wind outside. Moreover, Xiao Hua couldn't use flying techniques here and could only barely get close by using the earth escape technique. Of course, although Xiao Hua's body wasn't affected by the metal earth magnetic field, an irresistible feeling came from the metal earth magnetic field in front of him, and it faintly attracted Xiao Hua's storage bag and all the magic treasures in his body. Understand now, Xiao Hua felt the rich spiritual energy of heaven and earth and came to a realization. He thought to himself, the earth's spiritual energy here is so rich, almost solid, that it can easily form the bell Yao milk on the surface of the magnetic field. And if the earth element spiritual energy condenses in the magnetic field for a long time, it can also form the earth crystal Yao milk, right? But if that's the case, the Zhong Yao milk should be all over the surface of the magnetic field. It shouldn't be that hard to collect. Immediately, Xiao Hua had another question. After all, after looking at it for a while, Xiao Hua didn't see any darker brown spots on the surface of the magnetic field. On the contrary, Xiao Hua saw a few dazzling golden and brown fragments within the metal earth magnetic field. However, these fragments were too far away from the surface of the magnetic field, far more than a foot away. The talisman that Mo Qingyuan gave him was probably useless. Let's see if there's any other way. Xiao Hua pondered for a while, then stretched out his hand and took out the great wisdom sword. Mustering all the strength in his body, he used all his strength to stab at the metal earth magnetic field. Just as Xiao Hua had expected, the metal earth origin magnetic field did not move in the slightest. Not even the slightest trace was left on its surface. Forget it, Xiao Hua thought about the things in his space again. It seemed that there was nothing else useful, so he dispelled his unrealistic greed. Forming hand seals, he surrounded the metal earth origin magnetic field and looked for the dark brown fragments near the surface. Like a small ant looking for sesame seeds on a big watermelon, Xiao Hua opened his illusion breaker Dharma eye and slowly looked for the Zhong Yao milk and earth crystal Yao milk that might exist on the surface of the metal earth origin magnetic field. Because the outer layer of the metal earth origin magnetic field, this area of about 10 feet was full of rich gold and brown. Therefore, it was just like how the naked eye saw the sun. It was only dazzling. It was very difficult to distinguish the dark brown fragments near the surface. After the time it took for a stick of incense to burn, Xiao Hua himself didn't know how big of an area he had searched. Although he could occasionally see golden fragments and dark brown fragments within the metal earth origin magnetic field, the distance was far more than a foot. Moreover, there were no special light spots on the surface. All the spiritual energy of heaven and earth was absorbed into the metal earth origin magnetic field. Alas, I'm afraid there isn't enough time. Xiao Hua calculated for a moment. He still had to return to the surface, pass through the hurricane passage, and retreat from the space. He couldn't help but smile bitterly. Senior Sister Sun, Senior Sister Cohen, and Senior Brother Qian, it's not that I don't want to help you, but I really have the heart but not the strength. It all depends on your own luck. Saying this, Xiao Hua used his illusion breaker Dharma to sweep a glance at the entire metal earth origin magnetic field and said with a smile, "Eyes tripped this time. Isn't it the legendary saying of entering a treasure mountain and returning empty-handed?" But right at this moment, at the end of Xiao Hua's illusion breaker Dharma eye's vision, a palm-sized, extremely golden brilliance flashed and disappeared, just like a person suddenly leaving. Moreover, the direction it disappeared in was completely different from the direction in which the spiritual energy of heaven and earth entered the metal earth origin magnetic field. What's that? Xiao Hua was shocked. He hurriedly took out the great wisdom sword from the space. He didn't expect that in this kind of place, he would still be able to meet other cultivators. Let's go and take a look. Xiao Hua was somewhat hesitant. After pondering for a moment, he said, "Since we're going back, let's go that way. If we can meet other cultivators, that would be for the best. Maybe we can get some information about the Zhongyao milk. I will only take one drop. It won't conflict with other people, right?" Thinking this, Xiao Hua's hand tightened on the great wisdom sword. He used the earth escape technique and fled in the direction of the light shadow. However, after the time it takes for an incense stick to burn, Xiao Hua felt that it was getting harder and harder. He looked to his left and right. The golden brilliance was becoming more and more resplendent, and the brown brilliance was gradually decreasing. Oh, I understand. This should be the place where the metal earth origin magnetic field gathers. Xiao Hua suddenly understood. He looked in the direction where the golden light shadow disappeared. It was still very far away. This young master doesn't know metal escape technique. I probably can't go forward. Xiao Hua was somewhat regretful in his heart, but at the same time, he was somewhat glad. Let's go. Just as Xiao Hua was about to change direction, his transcendence vision saw a drop of brown light slowly drilling into the metal earth origin magnetic field in the midst of a golden brilliance. Io, isn't this the Zhongyao milk? Xiao Hua was wild with joy. At the same time, he also understood that this was a place where the metal earth origin magnetic field was flourishing. There was a lot of metal element spiritual qi, and the absorption of earth element spiritual qi was affected. The absorption speed was definitely not as fast as other places. Thus, the conditions for the formation of the Zhongyao milk existed. Great! Xiao Hua hurriedly used his dharma to look around. Sure enough, within the numerous metal qi, there were some dark brown dots that were almost black. These brown dots were like the freckles on a mortal's face. Chapter 1777. Xiao Hua was overjoyed. He moved to the side of these light spots with difficulty and took out the jade bottle. However, the moment the jade bottle left his hand, it was immediately sucked away by the magnetic force. Damn it! How could this young master forget again? Xiao Hua slapped his forehead and said regretfully. Immediately after, he waved his hand and was about to collect the Zhongyao milk that was seeping into the surface of the metal earth magnetic field. However, just as Xiao Hua was about to collect it, he encountered another problem. The rain-like Zhongyao milk was actually incomparably heavy. Every drop seemed to have the weight of 10,000 caddies. Xiao Hua was unable to collect the Zhongyao milk from the surface of the magnetic force with his mind alone. He could only use his magic power to forcibly extract it from the surface of the magnetic force and store it in his space. The amount of magic power needed to collect a drop was also extremely high. After Xiao Hua collected 5 drops, 20% of the magic power in his body had been consumed. Are you kidding me? Xiao Hua looked at the true energy in his body in astonishment. He understood that his magic power far exceeded his peers. His current true energy was comparable to an early-stage foundation establishment cultivator. In other words, an early-stage foundation establishment cultivator could only collect 20 drops of Zhongyao milk. However, when Xiao Hua looked at the incomparably huge magnetic force in front of him, he felt relieved. You're fighting over food with this kind of natural giant. Naturally, it's not bad to get a few drops of soup. According to the agreement with Mo Qingyuan, Xiao Hua could get 3.5 drops out of 5 drops of Zhongyao milk. No matter what, Xue Xue already got 1 drop. Helplessness and Xiangyang also got some. Sun Shu also got half a drop. Xiao Hua then placed his gaze on the earth crystal Yao milk. After looking for a long time, sure enough, on one side of the magnetic force, there were many dark light spots. They were not very evenly distributed. Some were close to the surface, and some were far from it. Finally, Xiao Hua was very gratified to see a place with several black spots. They were about a foot away from the surface. It's here. Xiao Hua hurriedly rushed over. He clapped his hand, and the green bamboo talisman appeared in his hand. He looked at the location of the black spots and made a hand seal to activate his magic power. When a few hand seals hit the green would suddenly produce a huge suction force, crazily absorbing Xiao Hua's magic power. Old man. His intentions are unforgivable. Xiao Hua felt his magic power being absorbed by the greenwood talisman like flowing water. He immediately understood that this talisman was used by Mo Qingyuan. Mo Qingyuan was a mid-stage foundation establishment cultivator, so his talisman could naturally be used by foundation establishment cultivators. If he were an ordinary qi refinement cultivator, wouldn't his magic power be sucked dry as soon as he activated the talisman? How could he still have the chance to escape from the metal-earth magnetic field? However, Mo Qingyuan clearly knew that this talisman was a foundation establishment cultivator's talisman, yet he didn't warn Xiao Hua at all. He didn't even give Xiao Hua a single medicinal pill that could increase his magic power. Fortunately, Xiao Hua wasn't an ordinary qi refining cultivator. After the green wood talisman absorbed 70% of Xiao Hua's magic power, it turned into a clear halo and stopped absorbing his magic power. At this moment, Xiao Hua couldn't be bothered to resent Mo Qingyuan. He raised his hand and a halo covered the surface of the metal and earth magnetic field. As soon as the halo approached the metal and earth magnetic field, it immediately began to rotate. Like a whirlpool in the sea, it gradually extended into the depths of the metal and earth magnetic field. Although the halo rotated very quickly, it extended very slowly. Xiao Hua watched with his Dharma eyes. The faint green brilliance gradually approached several black spots. He estimated that it would take at least a meal's worth of time to get close to those black spots. Oomph! Xiao Hua clapped his hands and took out some medicinal pills from his space. He opened his mouth and swallowed them. Then, he sat cross-legged on the surface of the metal and earth magnetic field and used the prairie fire cultivation technique to recover his true qi. Although the metal attribute spiritual qi in this place was excessive and there wasn't much fire attribute spiritual qi, it was still the spiritual qi of heaven and earth. Xiao Hua dissolved the pill liquid in his meridians and tempered his body with the metal attribute spiritual qi. His cultivation speed wasn't much slower than usual. After a meal's worth of time, Xiao Hua's magic power had already recovered by 80%. Estimating that it was about time, Xiao Hua was about to open his eyes. Suddenly, a palm-sized golden light shadow appeared about 10 zhang away from Xiao Hua. And inside this golden light, a vague white tiger was curiously staring at Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua naturally didn't know. When he opened his eyes to look, the white tiger seemed to be afraid and quickly fled into the distance. Xiao Hua just opened his eyes and hurriedly looked with his Dharma eyes. He only saw another golden light shadow disappear. Strange. Xiao Hua was slightly stunned, but a squeaking sound like a mouse gnawing on wood came from the green halo vortex. Xiao Hua didn't dare to be distracted and quickly looked at the source of the sound. Sure enough, the green brilliance had already dimmed. It was precisely the location of the black spots. Xiao Hua cast another spell, and a suction force appeared from his hand. As Xiao Hua expected, those black spots were even heavier than the Zhongyao milk. Xiao Hua used all his strength to pull them out of the metal-earth magnetic field. And just as those black spots left the surface of the metal-earth magnetic field, the green brilliance instantly dissipated with a schwa sound, turning into dots of fluorescent light that fell on the metal-earth magnetic field. Then, like drops of water falling into the desert, they seeped into the magnetic field and disappeared. Great! Xiao Hua's Dharma eyes swept over and knew that he had actually collected 5 drops of earth crystal Yao milk. He didn't have time to think about anything else. His mind enveloped them, and they were all collected into the space. Xiao Hua had already recovered 80% of his magic power. Collecting these 5 drops of earth crystal Yao milk consumed another 30%. Now, he only had 50% of his magic power left. Then, on the surface not far away from Xiao Hua used another 20% of his magic power to collect 5 drops of Zhongyao milk. He didn't dare to delay any longer. He cast a spell and hurriedly escaped from the space along the path he came from. Just after Xiao Hua's figure went far away, The white tiger, emitting a golden brilliance, appeared at the place where Xiao Hua had just stopped. It looked at the place where the earth crystal Yao milk was extracted, sniffed it with its nose, and shook its head in puzzlement. Then it raised its head again, as if looking at Xiao Hua, but also as if looking at the other side of the metal earth magnetic field. Then it leisurely disappeared. How could Xiao Hua know this? He only took some pills to recover his magic power while looking for the gap in the netherworld wind from just now, preparing to leave this place. Just when Xiao Hua found a gap and was about to leave, he stopped and looked at the other side of the metal earth magnetic field with his Dharma eyes. He thought to himself, the metal earth magnetic field is the convergence of the two attributes of metal and earth. Metal gives birth to earth. Earth restrains metal. It's the two attributes of the five elements that mutually reinforce and restrain each other. Just now, I went to the extreme point of the metal magnetic field. Because the metal attribute is extremely strong, the earth attribute spiritual energy was able to condense into the point-shaped earth crystal Yao milk and stalactite Yao milk. Then what about the extreme point of the earth magnetic field on the other side? Is there also the condensation of metal attribute spiritual energy there? Then what is the condensation of metal attribute spiritual energy? Since there's the metal earth magnetic field, then isn't there also the earth-fire magnetic field, fire-water magnetic field, water-wood magnetic field, and wood-metal magnetic field? Or perhaps earth and wood magnetic field? There should be two attributes that mutually reinforce and restrain each other, but two unrelated attributes. I'm afraid there isn't, right? However, that might not be the case. The world is so big that nothing is too strange. Just because you don't know doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Even if you see it, it might not necessarily be true. Why am I thinking so much? Right now, I'm only an aura refining cultivator. Wait until I'm a nascent soul cultivator, then I'll think about this again. Xiao Hua let out a long howl. His figure entered a crack in the netherworld wind, disappearing without a trace. His howl was indeed very soft. It simply didn't cause any disturbance. Not to mention the white tiger that was nearby. There was no need to mention the earth magnetic pole that was even further away. After returning to the place where he'd collected the puppet, Xiao Hua didn't rush forward. Instead, he took some medicinal pills and sat cross-legged to recover most of his magic power. Only then did he slowly return to the surface with a frosty expression on his face. In front of the hurricane passage, Mo Qingyuan's face also didn't have any expression. It was as if he'd long known the outcome, or perhaps he'd only understood the cruelty of reality after his extreme desire. He only silently looked at the hurricane passage that was slowly shrinking, then turned around to look at the ground where he'd come out from. Up until now, he hadn't given himself the slightest reason to believe that a peak stage or a refining cultivator would be able to come out from there again. Even if this cultivator could control magic treasures, wasn't afraid of the metal earth magnetic field, and had the ability to contend against his puppet. Alas, Mo Qingyuan sighed. It was as if it was because of Xiao Hua's fate, his own incompetence, or that puppet of his that had great use. He turned around and waved his hand. The 3 human-shaped battle puppets, as well as a dozen odd puppets that had come out from the earth, were all put into his storage pouch. Immediately after, from the edge of the passage, a 6th light blue flying sword appeared from an extremely hidden place. And Mo Qingyan pointed his hand and put it away as well. However, just as his figure floated to the front of the passage, a cold voice said, "Senior Mo, could it be that you don't want the earth crystal Yao milk anymore?" This voice was like a bolt from the blue, instantly shocking Mo Qingyuan. He turned around in disbelief, even forgetting to release his divine sense. His surprised and disbelieving gaze fell on Xiao Hua's ice-cold face. "You really got the earth crystal Yao milk?" Mo Qingyuan's voice was somewhat trembling and extremely low. He didn't sound like a Foundation establishment cultivator at all, but more like a mortal who was suppressing his emotions. Xiao Hua looked at the passage in front of Mo Qingyuan, which had already shrunk by 20%, and said coldly, Now doesn't seem to be the time to talk about this. That's right, that's right. Mo Chingen immediately came to his senses and said repeatedly, "The hurricane passage here is already about to collapse. I'm afraid it will take several years for it to form again." And as he spoke, Mo Chingen stretched out his hand and said with a smile, "Your magic power must be exhausted. Let this old man take you on a journey." Xiao Hua waved his hand and said, "No need. This junior still has energy left. Senior, if you want to get what you want, then lead the way." Hee okay. Mo Qingyuan couldn't argue with Xiao Hua at this time, and the awkwardness on his face disappeared in a flash. Then, without saying a word, he floated up again and rushed toward the hurricane tunnel. Chapter 1778. Although Xiao Hua had the dream executioner in his mouth, whenever he saw anything strange about Mo Qingyuan, he would immediately summon his flying sword without hesitation. However, even though it was unexpected, it was also within his expectations. Mo Qingyuan only hurriedly flew out of the passage. During this time, he didn't even look back or release his divine sense. And behind Xiao Hua, the hurricane gradually shrank, as if it was squeezing Xiao Hua, expelling Xiao Hua from the relatively quiet center of the tunnel. After Xiao Hua escaped from the passage and entered the stone wall, he heard a loud, tearing sound behind him. The entire passage disappeared, and the netherworld wind howled and wreaked havoc. Lucky, Xiao Hua's back was covered in a layer of cold sweat. He secretly rejoiced that he didn't get greedy for more Zhongyao milk. The stone wall disappeared in a flash. Mo Qingyuan was already standing not far from the stone wall with a smile on his face, looking at Xiao Hua with eager eyes. "Congratulations, fellow Taoist Xiao. Congratulations." Mo Qingyuan cupped his hands and said, "I didn't expect fellow Taoist Xiao to be so lucky. You actually really got the earth crystal Yao milk." Xiao Hua sneered and said, "Fellow Taoist Mo, when did I say I got the earth crystal Yao milk? What? You didn't get it?" Mo Qingyuan's face turned cold. What's I's cultivation level? How could I use a foundation establishment talisman?" Xiao Hua's eyes narrowed, and he said coldly, "Fellow Taoist Mo, you really overestimate I's cultivation level." Mo Qingyuan was stunned. Then he suddenly understood, and then became very frightened. He said, "Io, look at this old man's brain. How could I forget about this? Atonement, atonement." But before he could say anything, Mo Qingyuan's face showed surprise again. He said, so, fellow Taoist Xiao, still used a talisman? That earth crystal Yao milk." Seeing the rich expression on Mo Qingyuan's face, Xiao Hua was so angry that his teeth itched. He wanted to punch this guy in the face and smash his face into a piece of persimmon. Unfortunately, the other party was a senior in the middle stage of foundation establishment. If it weren't for the fact that he had some misgivings towards him, he would have killed him a long time ago. He could only feign civility and do his best to obtain the greatest benefits. "Senior Mo, this doesn't seem to be a good place to talk, right?" Xiao Hua still didn't speak the truth. He only looked around and said leisurely, It's fine now." Mo Qingyuan smiled and said, "The space here is stable. There are at least 6 hours left. It's enough for us to get out." 6 hours? Xiao Hua sneered in his heart, but his mouth said, "Oh, that's good. Fellow Taoist Xiao, did you get the earth crystal Yao milk or not?" Mo Qingyuan asked, "Since you're already here, you fulfilled your promise, right?" Xiao Hua glanced at Mo Qingyuan, grinned, and said, "I said that I would give you 30% of the Zhong Yao milk. But I didn't say where or when, did I?" "You." A gloomy expression flashed across Mo Qingyuan's face, and then he sneered, "Fellow Taoist Xiao, could it be that you think I can't do anything to you? If you provoke me, the methods of a foundation establishment cultivator." Senior Mo, you seem to be thinking too much." Xiao Hua rolled his eyes and said with a smile, "I think it's better to make a deal after we get to the netherworld. After all, I don't have any confidence in this space crack." Mo Qingyuan stared into Xiao Hua's eyes, as if he wanted to know if he was telling the truth. After a long while, he said, "All right, since that's the case, I'll be magnanimous this time. Let's talk after we get out of this space crack. Follow me." Mo Qingyuan didn't even turn his head. His body floated up again, crossed the gully, and flew in a certain direction. "Senior, don't be anxious. My flying talisman isn't very useful," Xiao Hua shouted as he slowly climbed out of the gully and followed behind Mo Qingyuan. He was extremely vigilant. Mo Qingyuan was helpless, but he couldn't stop. He could only fly in front slowly. In the time it took to eat a meal, Mo Qingyuan brought Xiao Hua to the place where Sun Shu had placed the talisman. Xiao Hua was shocked to see Mo Qingyuan easily find the location of the space crack in the yellow space. He couldn't figure out how Mo Qingyuan had done it. Mo Qingyuan looked at the location of the space crack and sneered. Hee, there's actually a talisman. Your Imperial Lightning sect seems to have put in a lot of effort. Then he looked to the left and said, "Do you have other senior brothers coming with you?" "What do you think, Senior Mo?" Xiao Hua said with a smile. They're all Qi refinement disciples. What's the difference?" Mo Qingyuan sneered. Then he clapped his hands, and the wooden dragon chopper flew out of his storage bag. Mo Qingyuan rubbed his hands, and the wooden dragon chopper turned into a small dragon. The dragon's tail cut through the air, and with a clang, a bright light flashed in the air. Then the light grew bigger and bigger. In the time it took to drink a cup of tea, it turned into a space crack that was 3 meters long and 5 meters wide. Through the crack, they could see the familiar netherworld outside. Countless wind pillars were near and far in their field of vision. "Let's go." Mo Qingyuan jumped out and stood in the air above netherworld. Xiao Hua hesitated for a moment. When he saw that Sun Shu and the others weren't behind him, he could only jump out. Fortunately, the space crack didn't heal as quickly as last time. "Xiao Hua, can we make the deal now?" Mo Qingyuan's expression wasn't as good as it was in the space. "Of course." Xiao Hua nodded, but then he said, "However, the conditions have to be changed." "What?" Mo Qingyuan was stunned. "You've already made a hard oath. How can you change it?" As long as Senior changes the conditions, it won't be considered a violation of the hard oath," Xiao Hua said with a smile. "What if I don't agree?" Mo Qingyuan narrowed his eyes and said. Xiao Hua had a card up his sleeve as he said, "Junior thinks that Senior will definitely agree. After all, Senior's carelessness almost cost Junior my life." "Oh, I see." Mo Qingyuan naturally knew what Xiao Hua was talking about. He nodded slightly. "Tell me, let me hear it first." "Zhongyao milk. Junior can only give Senior 1 drop." Xiao Hua had already calculated and said quickly. "Impossible." Mo Qingyuan flatly refused. But then he said with a trembling voice, "Could it be? You really got the Earth Crystal Yao milk?" Until now, Mo Qingyuan still couldn't believe it. "That's right. Junior did get the Earth Crystal Yao milk." Xiao Hua nodded. "Moreover, I'm going to give this drop of Earth Crystal Yao milk to Senior." "Oh, if that's the case, I understand." Mo Qingyuan's face showed that he understood, but the joy didn't disappear. He said hastily, "You went in, so I can't let you get too little. This old man agrees to your conditions." Chapter 1779. "Great." Xiao Hua didn't explain and said with a smile, "Junior knows that Senior is a kind person who takes pity on me." "Ha ha." Mo Qingyuan laughed and said, "Give it to me. Senior, please give me the puppet refining technique." Xiao Hua said. Mo Qingyuan clapped his hand and took out a jade slip. With a wave of his hand, it flew in front of Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua cautiously scanned it with his divine sense. When he felt that there were no problems, he took it with his hand. Then, he immersed his divine sense into it and roughly looked through it. He was a little disappointed and said in a low voice, "Senior Mo, this puppet refining technique, why is it only the first half?" Didn't I say? I can only give you the most basic refining technique. The other battle and strange puppet refining techniques are in the second half. I didn't promise to give it to you." Mo Qingyuan said with a smile. Xiaohua's mouth was filled with bitterness. How is it? My puppet refining technique is real, right? It's authentic. Yes, it is. It's real. Xiaohua smiled bitterly. Then give me my puppets, Earth Crystal Yao Milk and Zhong Yao Milk, said Mo Qingyuan in an extremely amiable tone. I don't want to be known as a bully. Yes, senior, take it. This is Zhong Yao Milk. Xiaohua waved his hand, and a drop of brown Zhong Yao Milk flew out. Why didn't you put it in a jade bottle? Joy flashed across Mo Qingyuan's face, and he reprimanded. After he put away the Zhong Yao Milk, Xiaohua took out the black Earth Crystal Yao Milk. Unexpectedly, the moment the Earth Crystal Yao Milk appeared in the air, it immediately expanded rapidly. Moreover, it was incomparably heavy and fell towards the ground. Ignorant, Mo Qingyuan scolded. Can you take out a treasure of heaven and earth without using a talisman? As he spoke, he didn't have time to say anything else. He hurriedly formed hand seals, and several rays of light hit the Earth Crystal Yao Milk, barely stopping it from expanding. However, at this time, the Earth Crystal Yao Milk was already the size of a fist. After the green light on Mo Qingyuan's body flashed a few times, he put the Earth Crystal Yao Milk into his storage bag. Xiaohua's face was filled with embarrassment as he said in a low voice, Junior didn't know that the Earth Crystal Yao Milk had such a mutation. Mo Qingyuan was in an extremely good mood, and he waved his hand and said, You're naturally unaware. It's my fault for not warning you earlier. Where are my puppets? Senior, please wait a moment. Xiaohua clapped his hand. What he took out wasn't a puppet, but the cloud-suppressing seal. The moment the cloud-suppressing seal appeared, it let out a thunderous roar and flew above Xiaohua's head. It scattered a yellow light that covered Xiaohua. You're quite cautious. Mo Qingyuan's face was calm. I've already made a hard oath. What are you afraid of? Junior doesn't dare. Xiaohua's face was filled with panic, but he didn't care. He even felt a faint excitement in his heart, hoping that Mo Qingyuan would go back on his word. When Xiaohua took out the puppet from his storage bag, he threw it out of the cloud-suppressing seal's light barrier. The puppet immediately somersaulted in the air and stood upright in midair, sandwiching Xiaohua between it and Mo Qingyuan. What? Xiaohua, you're only taking my puppet? Mo Qingyuan frowned as he spoke. Hee, Senior Mo, I'm only exchanging this puppet with you. The other puppet seems to be surnamed Xiao as well. Senior, you still want something else to exchange for it? Xiaohua smiled as he spoke. What do you want? Mo Qingyuan's tone was cold. Of course, I want the refinement method for the other half of the puppet. Xiaohua spoke coldly as well. Ha ha ha. Mo Qingyuan clapped his hand, and the wooden dragon chopper flew out again. Since you're unable to keep your hard oath, then I naturally don't have to keep my hard oath. Xiaohua. However, Mo Qingyuan hadn't finished speaking when his expression suddenly changed drastically. He actually seemed to be overjoyed as he exclaimed, The Nether Lotus? How could such a thing exist? Then, he ignored Xiaohua's astonishment and clapped his hand. He took out the centipede-like puppet and tossed it in front of Xiaohua. He hurriedly said, Forget it, I won't lower myself to your level. That combat puppet is one of the 4 phases formation. I can't give it to you, so I'll exchange it with this puppet. After that, he glanced at the puppets behind Xiaohua and said, If you don't agree, then this old man will immediately fall out with you. This old man doesn't believe that this old man and a dozen puppets can't kill him. Xiaohua muttered to himself for a moment before he waved his hand. He put away the centipede-like puppet and took out the combat puppet. He tossed it out of the light of the cloud-suppressing seal as well. At least you know what's good for you. Mo Qingyuan sneered and waved his hand. The 2 puppets floated up with him and flew out of the open space. After he flew a few meters away, he turned around and said, Xiaohua, I've enjoyed working with you. If you have the chance in the future, come to the north of the desert. I'll consider giving you the second half of the art of puppetry. Xiaohua raised his brows and said, Thank you for your kindness, Senior. I still want to live for a few more years. You can live for a few more years. Mo Qingyuan's tone was very strange, but this spatial rift is supposed to open up an hour later. Now that I've opened it up with a wooden dragon chopper, I'm afraid it won't close on time. Those fellow disciples of yours may not be able to live for much longer. Ha 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 ha. Old geezer. Xiao Hua was exasperated as he swept the spatial rift with his divine perception. Sure enough, the spatial rift actually showed signs of collapsing and wasn't healing naturally. I was wondering why the spatial rift would stop there the moment it was opened. So it was forcefully torn apart. Xiao Hua came to a realization. Without caring about anything else, he jumped in again and opened his Dharma eyes. He saw the talisman left behind by Kuan Fian near the spatial rift. Then, Xiao Hua silently chanted a spell and activated his Dharma Chi. He hit the talisman one by one. When the talisman turned into a ball of light, Xiao Hua hurriedly hit it on the spatial rift, temporarily suppressing the collapse of the spatial rift. Senior sister Sun, senior sister Kuan, senior sister Kuan, senior brother Qian, quickly come back. Whether you have Zhongyao milk or not, hurry back. I have a lot here, enough for the three of you to use. Xiao Hua muttered as if he was casting a spell. Right, send 1,000-mile sound, transmitting talisman. Xiao Hua suddenly quivered. He clapped his hands, and 3 sound, transmitting talismans appeared in his hands. He activated his Dharma Chi, and 3 rays of light flew out. Who knew that although the 3 rays of light went in different directions, they all flew lower and lower. In less than 10 feet, they were suppressed by the heavy earth spiritual chi and couldn't fly any further, falling to the ground. What should I do? Xiao Hua had the heart, but he was powerless. In a moment of desperation, Xiao Hua thought of the green seal script. Every word contained boundless Dharma Chi. If only I could use the green seal script. If I moved my mouth, the senior sisters would be able to hear it. But this thought only flashed through his mind. Xiao Hua could only look at the spatial rift in vain, hoping that Sun Shu and the other 2 would hurry back. Speaking of the Netherworld, the location where the Netherworld orchid was found by the disciples of the 3 sects of the Shenghua sect was different from before. At this moment, the several hundred feet tall wind pillar had already become much smaller. It was like a large net that had been spread out from the ground and was slowly being pulled back into the ground. Even with the naked eye, one could see the top of the wind pillar from a distance. Of course, the wind pillar's rotation speed was still the same as before. The huge air current was still wreaking havoc around the wind pillar. Within the wind pillar, the faint blue light was even more dazzling, but its shape was still blurry. It faintly resembled an orchid. At the bottom of the several hundred feet tall wind pillar was a huge depression. It should be a huge wind tunnel that led underground. At this moment, there were no longer a few people around the wind tunnel, but a total of 200 people. That's right, they were the 100-plus disciples of the Shenghua sect, Xuanyin school, and Qiqiao sect that were guarding the entrance to the Netherworld. They were also the 100-plus disciples from the other sects that they wanted to block. It was clear that the Shenghua sect and the other sects' plan to lead these disciples down the wrong path had failed. Which of these disciples that could cultivate to the 12th layer of Qi condensation weren't meticulous? Which one of them wasn't scheming? A simple and unplanned plan couldn't deceive them. Moreover, the change in the wind pillar could be seen from several dozen kilometers away. Who wouldn't come over to take a look? Kill. The female cultivator among the first few disciples to arrive coldly said. An older disciple of the Qiqiao sect glanced over and slowly nodded. Our 3 sects disciples have already formed a formation, but the wind pillar is several hundred feet wide. It's impossible to block it all. If we attack, we won't have any advantage. But if we don't attack now, what will happen to the Netherworld orchid after the wind pillar returns to the wind tunnel? What guarantee do we have? The female cultivator said with dissatisfaction. If your Qiqiao sect doesn't attack, I will give the order. Forget it. Foundation establishment is an opportunity. Perhaps it will be the Netherworld orchid, or perhaps it will be this life and death battle. The cultivator sighed and turned to look at another cultivator. They exchanged glances and clapped their hands, taking out an intricate yellow talisman. With a bit of magic power, it immediately transformed into the shape of a small bird. With a few chirps, it flapped its wings and flew into the air. Next, the small bird suddenly exploded in the wind. The yellow light condensed into the word Qiao. The Qiao sect disciple shouted, "Pass down the Qiao sect's disciple order. Disciples attack." Following that, a green goose-shaped talisman and a fireworks-shaped messaging talisman both flew into the air. The two voices sounded at almost the same time. Shanghua sect's disciples attack. Xuanyin School's disciples attack. Roar. After receiving the orders from their senior martial brother, the three sect's disciples, who had already rested, activated their magic power and threw out their yellow talismans. They attacked the disciples scattered around the wind pillar. Just as the Qiao sect's disciples expected, they had already suffered a great loss at the entrance of the Netherworld Orchid. How could they repeat the same mistake? When they got close to the wind pillar, they had already spread out. Now that they saw the three sect's disciples attacking, they even used their flying talismans to escape. They were using a wandering tactic. Chapter 1780. Chase. The three sect disciples were helpless. Seeing that their probing was ineffective, they immediately gave the order. Kill. Receiving the order, the three sect disciples could only disperse their formation and chase after the enemy. However, they were well-trained and formed groups of 2s and 3s to attack. For a time, the entire wind pillar was surrounded by flashes of brilliance and continuous sounds. From time to time, miserable screams could be heard from different places. Senior martial brother, Kan. How should we deal with this? Seeing the three sect disciples attacking, Kan Peng asked in a low voice. Let's wait and see. Kan Shiming glared at Kan Peng, then glanced at the pale Jin Yuhui and said in a low voice, "Can't you see that junior martial brother Jin's injuries haven't healed? We can't fight recklessly with the Shanghua sect disciples." "Yes," Kan Peng replied with a lowered brow, but the yellow talisman in his hand was already prepared. The four disciples of the Imperial Thunder sect were also unlucky. Seeing Xiao Hua's group rushing into the dark mystery, they were happy in their hearts. They commanded the disciples of the other sects to take advantage of the situation and tear apart the formation set up by the disciples of the three sections. Then, they happily rushed into the dark mystery. However, the pride in their hearts didn't last long. The glory of being praised by the other sect disciples only lasted for a short while before they were targeted by the Xuanyin School disciples. Of course, the Imperial Thunder sect disciples were really awesome. They tore apart the formation of the other three sects and destroyed their plan to monopolize the Nether Orchid. This was a shortcut to the Foundation establishment realm, a great opportunity. How could they not bear a grudge? Xiao Hua ran away, but what about the other Imperial Thunder sect disciples? Could they run away? At this time, seeing the 10 Xuanyin School disciples chasing after the Imperial Thunder sect disciples, the other sect's disciples all ran away in fear. How could they help Kan Shiming and the others? In the end, after several fights, Jin Yuhui was seriously injured and Jinjian City was sacrificed. If it wasn't for the strange phenomenon in the wind pillar that Kan Shiming discovered in time and desperately ran here, the three Imperial Thunder sect disciples probably wouldn't have even seen the shadow of the Nether Orchid before they died in the hands of the Xuanyin School disciples. Of course, when Kan Shiming reached the side of the wind pillar, the Xuanyin cult disciples had no choice but to stop and focus their attention on the Nether Orchid. Only then did Kan Shiming heave a sigh of relief and let Jin Yuhui quickly consume some medicinal pellets to recuperate. Xiaohua. Ah, Xiaohua, you're really hateful. Not only did you not listen to Ai's command, but you actually dared to charge into the formation without my permission. You clearly have the strength to break the formation, but you didn't tell Ai. You can't follow the big picture. This kind of loose cultivator's consciousness is really hateful. When I return to the Imperial Thunder sect, I will definitely report to my sect master and ask him to punish you. Hateful, truly hateful. Kan Shiming cursed Xiao Hua 3 or 4 times in his heart. Clearly, he hated Xiao Hua to the extreme. He had long forgotten about Xiao Hua's contribution in breaking the formation and allowing them to enter the netherworld. Meanwhile, Qin Shi Ming's gaze had been wandering around the wind pillar, trying to find traces of Xiao Hua, Sun Shu, and the others. Senior brother Can, stop looking, Qin Peng sneered. I'm afraid that Xiao Hua has already died. Think about it. If Shu and Yin School's disciples are chasing us, what are Shanghua sect and Qiqiao sect disciples doing? They're definitely chasing after Xiaohua. We're already in this state. Can they still live? Besides, we've already seen the strange phenomenon around the wind pillar. They still haven't come, and before Qin Peng could finish his words, a sharp sound appeared near Qin Peng's left amidst the clamor and the whistling of the wind. Damn it, they're finally here. Qin Shi Ming smiled bitterly. Seeing the Qiqiao sect's disciple flying over to attack, he slapped his hand and threw out a seal of ice talisman. A ball of light blue light flew into the air and met the incoming icicles. Take junior brother Jin to the wind pillar, Qin Shi Ming ordered. His body flew up, and as he placed a Vajra talisman on himself, he raised his voice. Yes, this disciple understands. Qin Peng didn't dare to be negligent. He placed his hand on Jin Yuhui's shoulder and threw out a flight talisman, ready to take him away. Ha, Imperial Thunder Sect disciple. Where do you think you're going? Another voice rang out from the gust of wind. Before the voice even faded away, a crimson-red brilliance lit up in the air, not far from Qin Peng. A Seven Skills Sect disciple held a foot-long red palm leaf fan and waved it towards Qin Peng. The crimson-red brilliance came from the palm leaf fan. Magic treasure? Yang leaf fan. Seeing the palm leaf fan surrounded by tiny flames, Qin Peng cried out involuntarily. The might of the magic treasure couldn't be concealed even by the wind. Qin Peng couldn't care less about taking Jin Yuhui with him. He withdrew his hand and took out a 3-inch-long black stick from his storage pouch. It was his favorite magic treasure, the Thunder Roll. The Yang Leaf fan was slowly fanned in the Seven Skills Sect's disciple's hand. The surrounding heaven and earthling chi was absorbed by the Yang Leaf fan. First, a crimson flame appeared, then countless flames gathered together to form a fire dragon. The fire dragon was driven by the Yang Leaf fan and flew towards Qin Peng. The fire dragon absorbed the heaven and earthling chi and grew even bigger. When it got close to Qin Peng, it was already 3 feet long. Qin Peng clenched his teeth and sent all the magic power in his body into the Thunder Roll. Countless tiny lightning bolts surged out and formed a lightning net in front of Qin Peng in the blink of an eye. Go! Qin Peng waved the Thunder Roll weakly. The lightning net let out a rumbling sound and flew towards the fire dragon. In the blink of an eye, the lightning net sank into the fire dragon. Crackle! A series of loud, crackling noises rang out. The lightning on the lightning net flickered several times. Before it disappeared, the fire dragon's power was greatly reduced. However, the Yang Leaf fan was, after all, a magical treasure. 30% of the fire dragons were annihilated by the lightning roll. Even more fire dragons were able to pass through the lightning net with a snap of the fingers and drown Qin Peng and Jin Yuhui with lightning speed. Qin Peng and Jin Yuhui already had defensive yellow talismans around their bodies to resist Ming Shi's wind. But at this time, under the scorching heat of the fire dragon, the yellow talismans simply couldn't resist for even a moment and were annihilated in an instant. Senior apprentice brother Can, save me! Qin Peng shouted and continuously placed defensive yellow talismans on his body. As for Jin Yuhui, he was even more miserable. He only felt a burning pain all over his body. He only had time to scream before his body began to rapidly melt. He turned into a pile of ash and was blown away by Ming Shi's wind. Qin Peng's resistance was futile. How could a few yellow talismans resist a magic treasure? After a few breaths of time, he followed in Jin Yuhui's footsteps. Imperial Thunder Sect disciple. You're only SOSO. The Seven Skills Sect disciple proudly smiled. Without stopping, he slapped his hand and took out a pill. Just as he was about to put it into his mouth, a chuckle sounded from the side. I've been waiting for you for a long time. Leave this young leaf fan to I. As he spoke, a cultivator wearing a black Taoist robe suddenly broke free from his battle with another Xianghua sect disciple. He waved his hand and a fist-sized blue bead flew out. A layer of blue light rippled out from the bead and rushed towards the 7 possibilities sect disciple like a tide. Chapter 1781. Aqua Pearl. You are. Seeing the pearl fly into the air, how could the 7 skills sect disciple not know that this aqua pearl was the same magic treasure that had fought against him several times at the entrance of the Dark Land? However, he had just used the Yang Leaf Fan and had used up all his magic power. How could he fight against the aqua pearl? With a pale face, he quickly took out a yellow talisman and used his magic power to activate it. Unfortunately, his resistance was not as good as Kempeng's. The aqua blue light easily broke through his defensive yellow talisman and rushed into his body. His body immediately crumbled inch by inch, turning into a pile of white bones that fell from the sky. Ha ha ha! The disciple who used the water blue pearl laughed out loud. His figure flew up, and with a wave of his hand, he grabbed the Yang Leaf Fan. Then, he no longer paid any attention to Zwanir and flew off in another direction. Such cruel scenes continued to appear around the Pillar of Wind. Lives were reaped one after another. The color of blood was reflected in the air and splashed all over the Dark Land. In the air above the Pillar of Wind, the little bird-like puppet was still spinning around the Pillar of Wind. Its lifeless eyes emotionlessly watched everything that was happening below. Although no one noticed the puppet, not far away from the Pillar of Wind, in the middle of the howling wind, there seemed to be no one there. A low voice rang out. Why is there a flying puppet here? Then, as if talking to himself, it should be the 7 skills sect's doing. They use it to observe the surroundings? This thing can be used? This old man has been here for a long time. How come I wasn't discovered? Sigh, although this Pillar of Wind has changed, this old man came all the way here only to see a dark orchid. This old man has no use for this thing. If I take it back, it will only benefit my junior brothers. Forget it. This old man should go find Xiao Hua and quickly kill him. Something's wrong. The voice seemed to be going far away, but after a short pause, it cried out again. The Pillar of Wind shrank by 40%, and the hurricane gradually became transparent. The turbid air gradually became clear, and the faint blue color at the bottom of the Pillar of Wind became clear. How was it a thin orchid? It was clearly a budding lotus. Netherworld lotus? The voice cried out in alarm. Ripples appeared in the air, and a human figure appeared. It was Jintong, who had used the invisibility talisman. Although the nether orchid is a spiritual herb that aura-refining cultivators yearn for even in their dreams, isn't this nether lotus also a supreme shortcut for us Foundation establishment cultivators to advance to the gold core realm? Zhendong's face lit up with joy, but he still didn't believe it. But I've never heard of a nether lotus appearing in the dark world. This thing is said to be at the bottom of the profound Mirage, the place closest to the netherworld. Only one flower would appear occasionally. Forget it. I don't care if it's a netherworld lotus or not. I know how to pick it, and I'll know how to use it in the future. Zhan Ting clenched his teeth. Everyone here is just an aura-refining disciple. I'll kill them all. Who would know that it was this old man who obtained the treasure? Ha ha ha. Xiaohua, Xiaohua. You really are a blessed person. Although I didn't go with you to find Zhongyao milk, I found the nether orchid here. This thing is much more precious than Zhongyao milk. As he spoke, the column of wind shrank rapidly, as if the blooming nether orchid had absorbed all the wind of the netherworld. Seeing this, Jintong didn't dare to delay any longer. He slapped his forehead and released a powerful pressure. Then, he brushed his storage bag, and a disc-like magic treasure appeared in his hand. It was none other than his favorite magic treasure, Bright Thunder. Under the influence of Zhentong's magic power, Bright Thunder emitted a faint electric light, and a blue brilliance emitted from the edge of the Bright Thunder. Go! Without hesitation, Zhentong pointed his finger. Bright thunder flashed with a few thunderous sounds and rushed into the crowd of aura-refining disciples who were fighting fiercely. The aura-refining cultivators were fighting fiercely, so naturally, they didn't notice Zhen Tong's appearance. When Zhen Tong released the pressure of a middle foundation establishment cultivator, everyone was shocked to find that under the pressure of a foundation establishment cultivator, except for some cultivators who were holding magic treasures in their hands, everyone else was paralyzed on the ground. Martial Uncle Zhen? Qin Shi Ming was about to be killed by a few Xuanyan school disciples. But the most critical moment, an irresistible pressure of a foundation establishment cultivator appeared. Moreover, Qin Shi Ming was facing Zhen Tong. When he saw Zhen Tong's appearance and the unique bright thunder of the Imperial Thunder Sect, he couldn't help but cry out in surprise. Moreover, when he saw bright thunder emitting thunderbolts and using sharp blades to kill the aura-refining cultivators who were paralyzed on the ground, and even used the power of bright thunder to kill the aura-refining cultivators who were slightly further away in the vortex of the column of wind, Qin Shi Ming was overjoyed. However, what Qin Shi Ming didn't expect was that bright thunder was also flying straight towards him. What made Qin Shi Ming's eyes almost pop out of their sockets was that bright thunder didn't show any signs of recognizing him. Oh no, Martial Uncle Zhen probably didn't see me. Qin Shi Ming hurriedly urged his transcendence energy to resist Zhen Tong's pressure. At the same time, he stretched out his hand and wanted to take out the Imperial Thunder Sect's unique messaging talisman. Boom, boom, boom. A burst of thunderclaps sounded in Qin Shi Ming's ears. A bright blue light flashed in Qin Shi Ming's eyes. That bright thunder's lightning struck Qin Shi Ming's body, and the power of the transcendent artifact sent his body flying towards the vortex of the column of wind. In the air, Qin Shi Ming had just taken out a transmission talisman from the Imperial Thunder Sect that had yet to be activated by magic power. Martial Uncle Zhen, this junior. Qin Shi Ming's lips trembled slightly, and he couldn't say a single word. His eyes were filled with despair and unwillingness, and they swept over Zhen Tong's gaze towards him. Unfortunately, Zhen Tong's eyes were indifferent, as if he didn't see Qin Shi Ming at all. How could an aura-refining cultivator be a match for a foundation establishment cultivator? Especially when it was a transcendent artifact of a foundation establishment cultivator. In just a short moment, there weren't many left. Now, it was one disaster after another, and there weren't many left. Zhen Tong snorted coldly when he saw the remaining disciples trembling in fear as they raised their transcendent artifacts in the air. He rubbed his hands, and a bolt of lightning as thick as a thumb shot out from the bright thunder. With a loud bang, the bird-shaped puppet didn't have any time to react. It immediately scattered and was swept into the column of wind, disappearing into the vortex in an instant. Kill! Zhen Tong didn't hesitate at all. The bright thunder continued to spin and flew towards the nearest leaf-shaped, transcendent artifact. Fellow Taoist, you're mighty. Before the bright thunder hit the leaf-shaped, transcendent artifact, a cold voice came from the other side of the column of wind. Who is it? Zhen Tong was startled. He pointed at the bright thunder, and it immediately stopped in midair. He scanned with his divine sense. The newcomer was Mo Qingyuan. Oh my, a foundation establishment cultivator. Zhen Tong was shocked when he saw Mo Qingyuan's cultivation. He glanced at the nether lotus that was gradually revealing itself, and a bad feeling arose in his heart. Fellow Taoist, please, Zhen Tong said with a smile. May I know which sect you are from? Which sect? Mo Qingyuan gradually flew to the other side of the column of wind. He scanned the corpses on the ground and in the vortex with his divine sense and sneered. You've killed so many disciples. One of them must be from I's sect, right? Zhen Tong pointed at I, and the bright thunder shone brightly. He sneered and said, Fellow Taoist, it seems that you're determined to be my enemy. Nonsense, this nether lotus was originally chosen by I. You want to take it away from I? Do you think I'll still pretend to be polite to you? Mo Qingyuan was obviously very angry. He didn't want to waste time talking to Zhen Tong. He clapped his hands, and the wooden dragon villa flew up into the air with a green light. A transcendent artifact. Zhen Tong smiled bitterly and thought to himself, why are there so many transcendent artifacts today? I's transcendent artifact was given to me by my sect. How come this cultivator also has a transcendent artifact? Seeing the wooden dragon villa, Zhentong's desire to bully the weak weakened a little. He quickly said, "Fellow Taoist, you're wrong. I've been here for a long time, but I didn't see you. How can you say I stole your nether lotus?" Hee hee. Mo Qingyuan sneered like Zhentong just now. He pointed at the corpse of the puppet in the vortex and said, "I's puppet has always been here. I know the situation here like the back of my hand. Fellow Taoist, you killed I's divine sense as soon as you arrived. How can I let you go?" Puppet? Divine sense? Zhentong obviously didn't know anything about puppetry. However, he sneered and said, "This is just a puppet of the Seven Skills sect. If you insist that it's yours, I don't care. This nether lotus is mine anyway. Since no other cultivators are here, I'll kill you first. Go." As he spoke, Hao Lei circled and countless lightning threads shot toward Mo Qingyuan. The Imperial Thunder Sect? Mo Qingyuan was stunned. When he thought of Xiao Hua's mysteriousness, he immediately became vigilant. He didn't dare to be careless. The wooden dragon villa shook its head and swung its tail toward Hao Lei. As the wooden dragon chopper appeared, Mo Qingyuan casually waved his hand. A speck of green quietly entered the whistling wind and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Now that you know I's a disciple of the Imperial Thunder Sect, you should quickly retreat. Zhenming grinned hideously and waved his hands. More lightning and fire appeared in his hands, whistling as they pounced on Mo Qingyuan. I'm afraid I won't be able to retreat with this little divine sense." Mo Qingyuan flicked his Taoist robe, and a faint green light appeared in front of him. Many lightning bolts hit the green light, causing it to sparkle. In the air, the wooden dragon villa's tail swung and chopped down on Hao Lei like a guillotine. The lightning bolts shot out by Hao Lei hit the tail of the wooden dragon villa. After several loud, cracking sounds, the wooden dragon villa's tail was bounced back, and Hao Lei's brilliance also dimmed. Hee hee. Mo Qingyuan stole a glance at the wind pillar that was about to reach the bottom. He narrowed his eyes and sent out his magic power at a moderate pace. Chapter 1782. Mo Qingyuan looked at the bottom of the wind pillar. How could Jinxing not look? The two of them had been fighting for the time it took for an incense stick to burn. Before they could determine the winner, the wind pillar had already fallen to about 10 feet. The blue nether lotus was already visible in the wind pillar. Moreover, the beautiful lotus was trembling slightly in the strong wind, just like the eyelashes of a lover. At this moment, the wind pillar that had fallen to about 10 feet suddenly shrank violently, exposing the nether lotus outside of the wind pillar. The shrinkage was so powerful that it shook the entire ground and stirred the air around the wind tunnel. Even Mo Qingyuan and Zhenxing, who were in the middle stage of the Foundation establishment realm, couldn't stand steadily in the air. Go! At this moment, the wooden dragon chopper was flying toward bright lightning. Mo Qingyuan's body tilted, and he unexpectedly pointed his finger. The wooden dragon chopper turned in the air and rushed toward the wind pillar, cutting toward the nether lotus. It's not that simple. Obviously, Zhendong had the same thought. When he saw Mo Qingyuan take the initiative, he couldn't help but feel embarrassed and angry. He rubbed his hands together, and luminous thunder whizzed toward the wooden dragon chopper, knocking it out of the whirlpool. Hee hee, fellow Taoist, you should stay. Mo Qingyuan waved his hand and cast a spell. Several thin blue Xiaohua petals appeared around Zhenxing and blocked his path. Zhenxing laughed loudly. After fighting for so long, you still don't know? Isn't I's lightning type spell the nemesis of your wood type spells? As he spoke, he spread out his hands. A few lightning threads that flickered with a fiery glow shot out and pierced into the few flower petals. Pa pa pa. A series of soft pa 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 sounds were heard. The green flower petals were all damaged. Zhenming's body extended and flew towards the wind pillar. His target was the nether lotus. Don't go. Mo Qingyuan seemed to be anxious, and he hurriedly gave chase. However, his speed was clearly slower than Jinho's. When Junho entered the pillar of wind, the suction force there had weakened greatly, and the top of the pillar of wind was only a few feet away from the nether lotus. Go! Mo Qingyuan was anxious. He flung his sleeves, and 4 human-shaped puppets and several odd-shaped puppets flew out of his storage pouch and surrounded Jinming. Jindong wasn't nervous at all. He looked at the puppets and sneered, "I have been waiting for you to take out your puppets. I didn't expect you to be so patient. However, you want to obtain the nether lotus with just these puppets? How naive." Mo Qingyuan's face was gloomy, but he didn't say anything. He waved his hand, and the 4 puppets attacked Jinming. The strange puppets also attacked from above and below. Mo Qingyuan didn't stay idle either. He threw out his talismans and other items. It seemed like he was out of tricks. As for Xiaohua, he was extremely anxious outside the spatial crack. He kept staring at the rich, earthen yellow, spiritual energy inside. Fortunately, even though Mo Qingyuan had opened the spatial rift a step earlier, he hadn't really succeeded in his plan. Furthermore, Xiaohua had also wasted a lot of time on the metal earth magnetic field. The spatial rift only collapsed after Sun Shu and the other 2 hurried over with disappointed expressions. The most dangerous one was still Qin Dian. This guy kept looking back with every step, hoping to step on dog shit at the last moment. "You better come out quickly." Xiaohua couldn't bear it anymore. He jumped into the spatial crack, grabbed Qian Dihing's arm, and quickly pulled him out. The 2 just came out, and in the blink of an eye, the spatial crack closed with a rumbling sound. The momentum was much greater than the last time. Seeing the spiritual talisman turn into specks of light and disappear, Sun Shu was shocked. He thought of Xiao Hua's abnormality and exclaimed, "Junior brother Xiao, what's going on? My spiritual talisman, why is it so fragile?" Xiao Hua sighed. He didn't know where to start. He thought for a while and said, it's a long story. Wait for me to come out of the nether lotus. And it's fine." Sun Shu looked at the place where the spiritual talisman disappeared with some heartache. He secretly grumbled in his heart, hoping that Xiao Hua could give a reliable reason. Otherwise, it would be difficult for him to explain to Sun Ming. "All right, senior brothers, how's the harvest this time?" Xiao Hua's gaze turned and asked with a smile. If I could find it, would I have come back late?" Qin Diheng said unhappily, "You look good, and you came back so early." "Don't tell me," Xiao Hua laughed. Just as he was about to say something, he heard an earthquake in the distance. The ground of the nether lotus shook slightly, and everyone's attention was drawn away from Xiao Hua. They all looked in the direction of the sound. The sky in the distance was extremely gloomy, but the numerous wind pillars were still wreaking havoc. They couldn't see anything special. It's that treasure." Qin Diheng immediately woke up and shouted, Let's go. Since there's no hope for the Zhongyao milk, we can't lose the treasure that can help us build our foundation." After saying that, he took the lead and flew towards the direction of the sound. "Junior brother Qian, wait a moment." Kuan Fian was also anxious. He shouted and followed behind. Sun Shu's face was obviously anxious. She looked at Xiao Hua and said, "Junior brother Xiao, let's go quickly. If we're late, the treasure will be taken by others. Besides, junior brother Xiao, your cultivation is profound, and you are the most powerful person to compete for the treasure. If you don't go, we won't have much hope." Xiao Hua saw that Sun Shu was talking to him while looking into the distance. He knew that Sun Shu also didn't expect that he would be able to obtain a lot of Zhongyao milk. He could only smile bitterly and said, "I will listen to senior sister's instructions." "All right, junior martial brother, follow this poor Taoist." Sun Shu also flew over, wanting to fly towards the source of the sound. Sun Shu and the others were anxious and had long forgotten about the threat of the space crack. However, Xiaohua didn't dare to be careless and secretly opened his delusion breaker Dharma eye. Fortunately, he didn't encounter any invisible space crack in the time it took to finish a meal from the open space to the place where the sound came from. When Xiao Hua arrived at the scene with Sun Shu, he couldn't help but be shocked by the miserable scene in front of him. There was a huge crater in front of him that was thousands of feet wide. Inside the crater, there was a violent wind howling. Through the delirium breaker Dharma eye, he could see a pool of blood. The crimson netherworld wind was spinning rapidly in the crater. It formed a huge hurricane whirlpool. In the center of the whirlpool, there was a 3-chi-long pinkish-blue lotus flower, blooming enchantingly. Netherworld lotus. Xiao Hua suddenly thought of the words that Mo Qingyuan had unintentionally said when he was trading with him. Looking at the whirlpool, there were many broken limbs and cultivator corpses floating in the hurricane. They wouldn't sink for a while. On the ground around the depression, there were also many cultivator corpses. They were all thrown there in a tragic manner. Chapter 1783. These should be the disciples of the 3 sects who blocked the entrance to the netherworld enlightenment and the disciples of the other sects who attacked their defenses. Xiao Hua's divine sense swept over and saw the corpses of nearly 200 people. His eyes finally landed on the whirlpool formed by the netherworld wind. Above the whirlpool, there were actually 2 mid-stage Foundation establishment cultivators. Each of them had taken out their magic treasures and were fighting to the death for the netherworld lotus. Furthermore, the 2 Foundation establishment cultivators were surrounded by a dozen or so puppets that would occasionally assist them. Needless to say, one of them was Mo Qingyuan, who had just left, and the other was a cultivator that Xiao Hua seemed somewhat familiar with. That's Martial Uncle Zhen Ming of your thunderous palace. Why is he here? Sun Shu didn't recognize Mo Qingyuan, but he recognized the other Foundation establishment cultivator who was fighting with Mo Qingyuan. He glanced at Xiao Hua and said in astonishment, "What? Thunderous Palace cultivators?" Xiao Hua's expression changed slightly. He said in a low voice, "Could he be a disciple of Swallow, Thunder Ridge? Martial Uncle Zhen Ming is really a disciple of Swallow Thunder Ridge." Sun Shu seemed to have thought of something, and his tone was somewhat gloomy. "Junior brother Xiao, are you? Don't worry, let's see." Xiao Hua's expression was unusually gloomy. If Sun Shu could think of it, how could he not? How could a disciple of Swallow Thunder Ridge appear here for no reason? Even if he didn't come here on purpose, the grudge between him and Swallow Thunder Ridge had turned this unintentional encounter into intentional complications. At this moment, the trembling bright lightning emitted a foot-long screen of light as it spun. It was like a sheet of sword light that pierced towards Mo Qingyuan. At the same time, Mo Qingyuan's wooden dragon chopper also transformed into a wooden dragon. It circled the sun, swaying its tail and opening its mouth, wanting to cut the sun. However, the sun spun and its dazzling brilliance blocked the wooden dragon chopper to one side. "Ha, fellow Taoist, Mo's magic power is only SOSO, and your puppets are also ordinary. I advise you to turn back as soon as possible." Zhen Kong laughed and said, "Since this old man has arrived first, this nether lotus is this old man's. It's fate. It's still too early to speak." Mo Qingyuan sneered. The green light around him trembled as he rubbed his hands together. Rays of green light flashed, and 6 rays of green sword light suddenly appeared around Jinming. The sword light had already appeared and immediately moved around Jinming like a net. A sword formation. Jinming was clearly shocked. He had been focusing on Mo Qingyuan's wooden dragon chopper and the puppets. He had never expected Mo Qingyuan to have a sword formation. Moreover, the sword formation had already been set up in the vicinity of the Nether Lotus. That's right. This was the Azure Essence sword formation. This sword formation was several times more powerful than a single flying sword, but it had a shortcoming, which was that it had to be set up in advance. Previously, Mo Qingyuan wanted to use the sword formation to trap Xiao Hua, who was not afraid of metal, earth, and magnetism in the space. That was why he had used the puppets to stall Xiao Hua while he set up the Azure Essence sword formation in front of the tunnel. In the end, the puppet ended up in Xiao Hua's pocket, which was why he was restrained so much. This time, Mo Qingyuan had already planned to secretly release his flying swords when he attacked with the wooden dragon chopper. Earlier, he had been fighting Jinming while setting up the sword formation silently. Now that he had set up the sword formation perfectly and lured Jinming into the Azure Essence sword formation, he was going to kill Jinming in one fell swoop. Jinming was clearly panicking. He waved his hand and wanted the bright lightning to fly in front of him to defend himself. However, Mo Qingyuan's wooden dragon chopper happened to be between the bright lightning and Jinming. No matter how the bright lightning flew, the wooden dragon chopper blocked it with its tail. Fellow Taoist, take care. Mo Qingyuan grinned hideously and performed a sword art with his right hand. 6 green sword lights, which looked like harmless fishes swimming around Jinming, immediately turned into stinging hornets and flew toward Jinming from all directions. Jinming was shocked. He waved his hand, and many yellow talismans fell like rain. At the same time, Jinming's body shone brightly as if all the defensive talismans had been activated. Humph, Mo Qingyuan sneered, but his eyes were looking at Xiao Hua in the distance, as well as Qian Diheng and Kuan Fian, who were standing near the vortex. Puff, puff, puff. Several high-grade yellow talismans were turned into talisman paper under the sharp flying swords. Jinming waved his hands continuously, and many palms of thunder and fireballs only hit the 4 flying swords to the left and right, but they could not completely shoot them down. As for the other 2 flying swords, Jinming could only shake his body and try his best to use the flying art to dodge. Unfortunately, he was now trapped in the sword formation. No matter how he tried to dodge, the 6 flying swords followed him like maggots. Dodging was only temporary. Xiao, junior brother. Sun Shu's face turned pale again. She whispered, "Should we go and help?" Xiao Hua's face was a little gloomy. Looking at the 6 sword lights in Mo Qingyuan's sword formation, no one knew what he was thinking. Hearing Sun Shu's question, he said coldly, "Senior sister's son, if you want to help, go ahead. I won't stop you. But if you want me to help, I'm sorry, I won't agree." Okay. Sun Shu bit her lips and answered decisively, looking at Qian Diheng and Kuan Fian. Although they were a little far away, they still turned to look at Xiao Hua. Seeing that Xiao Hua did not move, they also did not fly up. "Senior brother Qian, come over quickly." Xiao Hua suddenly realized and immediately transmitted his voice. "Yes." Hearing this, Qian Diheng turned and whispered to Kuan Fian. The 2 were ready to fly away, but at this moment, Mo Qingyuan, who was above the whirlpool, let out a long howl. Xiao Hua and the others looked over and saw that the 6 flying swords surrounding Jinming were shining brightly. 2 of them instantly pierced Jinming's hands that were releasing the palm thunder, and the other 4 sword lights pierced Jinming's body. The brilliance on Jinming's body flickered and then disappeared. Jinming screamed and fell from the sky. His corpse also fell into the whirlpool, mixing with the chi refinement cultivators that he had killed earlier. "Ha ha!" Mo Qingyuan laughed. He waved his hand, and the bright thunder that had lost control fell into his hand. Then, he pointed his finger, and the 6 flying swords flew up into the sky. Then, Mo Qingyuan did something that everyone present did not expect. He did not withdraw the 6 flying swords, and the wooden dragon chopper did not rush into the whirlpool to collect the nether lotus. Mo Qingyuan pointed his finger, and the 6 flying swords actually flew out of the whirlpool. Old man, Xiao Hua was shocked when he saw the flying swords fly out. He slapped his hand, and the cloud-suppressing seal flew out of his body. The earthy yellow light protected him and Sun Shu. However, Xiao Hua was still wrong. Mo Qingyuan's flying swords did not fly toward Xiao Hua at all. Instead, they surrounded Qian Diheng and Kuan Fian. Xiao Hua's expression changed immediately. He suddenly understood Mo Qingyuan's scheme. Fellow Taoist Xiao. Mo Qingyuan was not in a hurry to pick the nether lotus. Instead, he stood above the whirlpool and sneered. "Just now, it was a disciple of your sect, right? Looking at his cultivation, he should be your martial uncle. If you had joined forces with him, the one standing here right now should be the two of you. Xiaohua looked at him coldly and did not reply. Mo Qingyuan continued. Although this nether lotus is a must-have item for Foundation Establishment cultivators and has nothing to do with your qi refinement cultivation, since fellow Taoist Xiao did not come to help, there must be a grudge between you and this cultivator. This grudge, it must not be small. This old man will kill this beast today. Won't it make you happy, ah? However, since he did not come to help, then you must not let this news leak out. All the cultivators here must be killed, especially your 3 fellow disciples. They are your biggest threat, ah. This old man can tell with one look that the beautiful female cultivator beside you is your dual cultivation junior sister. This old man does not care. As for this pair of unfortunate Mandarin ducks, since we made a deal before, this old man will help you get rid of it, so that you don't have to bear the crime of killing your fellow disciples. As Mo Qingyuan spoke, he pointed his finger. More than 10 puppets flew towards the qi refinement disciples who were still alive on the ground. The 6 flying swords surrounding Kuan-Fian and Qian-Diheng also flashed with green light. Xiaohua's face was ashen. He pointed his finger, and the cloud-suppressing seal flew high into the sky. Rumble. The sound was deafening. He said sternly, Senior Mo, don't say anything to sow discord. This junior understands what you mean. This junior will not fight with you for this whatever nether lotus. Let go of this junior's fellow disciples. Fellow Taoist Xiaohua. In fact, I also feel very regretful. You have given I a lot of benefits. If this is the nether lotus, I will let you have it. Previously in the space, I even wanted to tell you this news. However, this is the nether lotus, and it is also something this old man must have. There's no other way, ah. Hearing Mo Qingyuan's extremely fearful attitude toward Xiaohua, Kuan-Fian and Qian-Diheng were more shocked than frightened. There was even a trace of joy. After all, with Xiaohua's existence, their lives were guaranteed. However, since fellow Taoist Xiao is so tactful, this old man will spare the two of them on account of our previous friendship. You all must swear that you will not leak this matter, and this old man will let you all leave. At this point, several screams came from the distance. The remaining cultivators must have been killed by the puppets. Okay. Xiaohua helplessly looked at Sun Shu. The two of them swore on the spot. So did Kuan-Fian and Qian-Diheng. But this time, Mo Qingyuan pointed his finger. The wooden dragon chopper flew to the left side of the nether lotus, swung its dragon tail, and cut off the crystal-clear pink lotus. Then Mo Qingyuan waved his hand, and the nether lotus fell into his hand. He put it into a jade box, and then several talismans were stuck on the jade box. After putting away the jade box, Mo Qingyuan was in a good mood. After putting away the flying sword and the puppets, he looked at Xiaohua and said, Fellow Taoist Xiao is indeed I's lucky star. Today's trip to the netherworld, this old man can expect to reach the nascent soul realm. This old man still has the same words. If you have time, you can come to this old man. This old man has a better opportunity for you. Senior, keep it for yourself, Xiaohua said coldly. Mo Qingyuan laughed, and his figure flew up, leaving the remaining 4 cultivators of the Imperial Thunder sect. After a while, Qian-Diheng, who was standing still and not daring to move, asked tentatively, Junior Brother Xiao, did that senior leave? He left. We should also prepare to leave, Xiaohua said unhappily. Qian-Diheng laughed and immediately flew into the whirlpool. Junior Brother Xiao, quickly come and help me. This nether lotus is a legendary thing. Even if it's just a root, it must be very useful. Did you make a mistake? This greedy. Xiaohua didn't know whether to laugh or cry, and his gloomy heart had a little bit of a smile. Then his figure flew up and directly flew into the sky above the nether lotus. I will also help. Kuan-Fian smiled and also followed behind Xiaohua. However, the moment Kuan-Fian got close to Xiaohua, Kuan-Fian suddenly stretched out his hand and patted Xiao Hua's shoulder. Chapter 1784. Kuan Fian very casually patted Xiao Hua's shoulder, as gentle as a lover's caress. But the moment Kuan Fian's hand touched Xiao Hua's shoulder, her white jade-like hand immediately flashed with a bewitching red light. Immediately after, the red light around Xiao Hua's body flashed, and all the magic power in her body instantly froze. Her magic power froze. Xiao Hua's flying technique immediately lost its effect, and her entire body fell from the sky. It fell straight into the whistling vortex. Xiao Hua looked up at Kuan Fian, her eyes filled with disbelief. And Kuan Fian's eyes were also filled with grief, regret, and reluctance. Xiao Hua, Sun Shu didn't fly over. Instead, she stood outside the wind tunnel and very clearly saw everything that was happening above the whirlpool. That heart-wrenching, lung-splitting, eternal cry immediately came from her mouth. Sun Shu's figure also charged into the wind tunnel at the same time. Junior brother Xiao? Qian Diheng only heard it now, and when he turned around, Xiao Hua was already very far away. Kuan Fian, are you crazy? Kuan Fian couldn't help but shout. Kuan Fian absent-mindedly looked at her own hand, her gaze somewhat sluggish. Everything that happened on the way from Imperial Thunder Sect to Ming, she flashed through her mind like lightning, and Xiao Hua's unusually warm smile actually froze in her mind. Just at this moment, a yellow shadow suddenly appeared, like a yellow wind blowing from the whirlpool, instantly scraping towards Kuan Fian's white swan-like neck. Kuan Fian still hadn't escaped from remembering Xiao Hua's kindness when she felt a chill on her neck, and all the strength in her body was sucked out of her body. All the magic power in her body also disappeared in an instant. Kuan Fian only felt her vision darken, and with her mind filled with Xiao Hua's smiling face, she fell into the whirlpool along with Xiao Hua. Senior sister son. Qian Diheng stood in the air above the whirlpool, dumbfounded as he watched everything that happened in a flash. He saw a yellow shadow flash in front of his eyes, and a light flashed past Kuan Fian's neck, and then he saw a stream of black blood flowing out from her neck. At the same time Kuan Fian's corpse fell, that yellow shadow flew into the whirlpool and stopped in the whirlpool for a moment. At this moment, Qian Diheng saw it clearly. It was actually a small yellow marten. Soon after, the little marten seemed to have pounced on a Xiao Hua's body and disappeared, or perhaps it fell into the whirlpool and disappeared. Qian Diheng didn't know, because at this moment, from the corner of his eyes, he saw Sun Shu rushing towards Xiao Hua, who was in the whirlpool, without hesitation. Qian Diheng was greatly alarmed. He hastily shouted and rushed over, pulling back Sun Shu, who was desperately trying to save Xiao Hua's body. Xiao Hua. There were already tears on Sun Shu's cheeks, one hand still reaching towards the raging whirlpool, but in the whirlpool, many of the corpses had long disappeared. The place where Xiao Hua and Kuan Fian had landed was the center of the whirlpool, and at this time, they had already been sucked into the depths of the wind tunnel. Sun Shu's white and slender fingers trembled slightly in the wind. He looked so helpless and hopeless. Seeing Sun Shu so sad, how could Qian Diheng not know? He did not dare to stay on the whirlpool for too long. He pulled Sun Shu and flew out of the wind tunnel. Sun Shu struggled a few times. Looking at the turbulent whirlpool, all the strength in her body disappeared, and she allowed Qian Diheng to pull her back out. However, just as the two of them stood on the ground, boom! A deafening sound that shook the heavens and earth came from the wind tunnel. The wind pillar once again rushed out from the wind tunnel with an aura that could destroy everything. It was 100 times faster than before, fiercely rushing up, and in the time it took to drink a cup of tea, the wind pillar had already rushed into the 9 heavens. Qian Diheng and Sun Shu were once again dumbfounded. Looking at the changes in the wind pillar in disbelief, they felt that their own cultivation was insignificant. After a while, Qian Diheng said in an incomparably lonely voice, Senior Sun. Junior brother Xiao and Kuan Fian. I'm afraid there is no hope of survival. We should get out of here as soon as possible. No, I still want to wait a little longer. Xiao Hua has always been mysterious. This little bit of wind pillar definitely won't take his life. Sun Shu's tone was firm, but there was already sorrow in her voice. All right, then this little brother will accompany Senior Sun. Qian Diheng nodded and said, however, close to 200 disciples have died here, and there will be many cultivators coming soon. If we don't get out quickly, I'm afraid we will be attacked by others. In this way, no one will know about junior brother Xiao and Kuan Fian's death. Moreover, as to why Kuan Fian killed junior brother Xiao, I'm afraid no one will investigate. Junior brother Qian, you don't need to persuade me, I know. Sun Shu's eyes flashed with determination, and she said word by word, I will definitely return to Sun Lei Palace and report this matter to Master, and ask Master to report to the Palace Master to investigate this matter. Yes, even if Kuan Fian is a disciple of Sun Lei Palace, she can't attack and kill her own junior brother for no reason. Qian Diheng added, not to mention that junior brother Xiao has saved us countless times along the way. Yes, although the strength of Myriad Thunder Valley is weak, there is still my Sun Lei Palace. I don't believe that a little Swallow Thunder Ridge can deceive the entire Imperial Thunder Sect. Yes, there is still my Sun Lei Palace. Qian Diheng stamped his feet and said, Junior brother Xiao and I are as close as brothers. I will definitely avenge junior brother Xiao. Let's go. Throw the surrounding corpses into the wind pillar, and take all the storage bags, magic tools, magic weapons, and other things. Sun Shu calmed down and ordered very calmly. Yes, Qian Diheng's expression relaxed, and asked again, what about the corpses of the 4 senior brothers? Throw them all away. Sun Shu sneered. Think about how they treated us that day, how they treated Xiao Hua. The corner of Qian Diheng's mouth twitched slightly, but he didn't say a word. He sighed and flew around the wind pillar. Sun Shu's heart was ice cold. It was as if with Xiao Hua's departure, the world lost its warmth. She stood up and slowly walked towards the wind pillar. The biting cold wind blew the brilliance around her body until it was extinguished. That flickering brilliance was like Sun Shu's thoughts, rising and falling, reminiscing and reminiscing. Bits and pieces of the past, like a hurricane, blew into her mind. Why is this? What exactly is going on with Kuan Fian? Where did that little yellow sable come from? Even Kuan Fian, who was at the 12th layer of the Qi refining stage, was killed with one strike. Why did Jinming also appear in the Netherworld? Who was that Foundation Establishment senior who killed Jinming? How did Xiao Hua and that senior get to know each other? It seems that senior was very afraid of Xiao Hua. A middle-stage Foundation Establishment cultivator actually used the lives of Kuan Fian and Qian Diheng to threaten Xiao Hua, fearing that Xiao Hua would fight over the Netherworld Lotus with him. Xiao Hua, Xiao Hua. Are you really that loose cultivator at the 10th layer of the Qi refining stage from before? The more Sun Shu thought, the more blurred her eyes became. Chapter 1785. Xiao Hua didn't pay any attention to Kuan Fian's actions, nor did he expect Kuan Fian to suddenly plot against him. That bewitching red light flashed around him, and it was as if he had fallen into an ice cave. Not only was his entire body frozen, even his meridians were frozen. Xiao Hua looked at Kuan Fian in disbelief. He instantly connected some of Kuan Fian's previous actions with Zhen Qi's appearance. Xiao Hua didn't have time to sigh in his heart before the great strength Vajradharma body and the dragon transformation art circulated in his body, and his entire body faintly glowed with a golden brilliance. This yellow talisman was probably refined by a Foundation Establishment cultivator. The great strength Vajradharma body and the dragon transformation art circulated rapidly, but they actually couldn't break through that bewitching red restriction in a short period of time. Xiao Hua was aghast. At that moment, his body was already swaying along with the whirlpool. Xiao Hua knew that he was about to fall into the whirlpool and lose control like a leaf falling into water. Looking at Qian Dihing's astonishment, Sun Shu's sorrow, and Kuan Fian's absent-mindedness, Xiao Hua's heart was also filled with despair, and his mind immediately entered the space. Xiao Hua's original intention was to let Little Yellow escape from the space and not fall into 9 hells with him. So he ordered Little Yellow to kill Kuan Fian. Who would have thought that before Xiao Hua could call Little Silver out, Little Yellow would actually return his side and fall into the whirlpool with him? Xiao Hua had no choice but to put Little Yellow into the space. Of course, Xiao Hua was at the root of the Nether Lotus at that moment, so it was very easy for him to put it away. Just as Xiao Hua put away Little Yellow and the root of the Nether Lotus, his entire body immediately started to spin like a windmill. Moreover, the incomparable attractive force in the center of the whirlpool pulled Xiao Hua into the ground. Xiao Hua only took one look at Kuan Fian's corpse before the whole world started to spin. Xiao Hua didn't dare open his eyes as he desperately circulated the dragon transformation art and the great strength Vajradharma body to break free of the restriction, wanting to escape before he fell into the depths of the wind pillar. With a light pa sound, Xiao Hua's body relaxed. His meridians moved, and his magic power instantly surged in all directions. At the same time, the great strength Vajradharma body emerged from his body. Great! Xiao Hua was secretly delighted. Just as he was about to open his delusion breaker Dharma, a suction force that was 100 times stronger than before was born. Xiao Hua simply didn't have any chance to struggle, and he was immediately pulled down several hundred meters. This suction force was so strong that it was like millions of hands were trying to tear Xiao Hua's body apart. Even though Xiao Hua had already refined his phoenix body, even though he had already released the mighty Vajra body, he was still unable to resist the might of the netherworld wind. In an instant, the brilliance around Xiao Hua's body flickered, and all of his defenses were torn apart. Moreover, his body was breaking apart inch by inch, and specks of blood were seeping out from within. This is bad. Xiao Hua was shocked. Enduring this heart-wrenching pain, his mind raced as he desperately circulated the Vajradharma body technique, trying his best to convert this pain into motivation for cultivation. At the same time, the 13,200 small dots within Xiao Hua's body also faintly flickered with a faint reddish-black brilliance, healing Xiao Hua's torn body at an extremely fast pace. However, the blood that had already flowed out was blown by the netherworld wind, and specks of blood fell into the wind. Among the blood, apart from a few glittering golden threads that fell down, everything else disappeared in a flash. Below the wind pillar, an unknown distance away, there was precisely a fist-sized spirit insect. This golden thread, perhaps it could fall, or perhaps it would be blown to some other place. But if it could fall, then perhaps there would be another great variable in this world. Xiao Hua activated the mighty Vajradharma body technique and was barely able to resist the netherworld wind that could directly tear apart ordinary cultivators. Then, taking advantage of the fact that the suction force was stronger than the rotation force, he struggled to break free from the rotation and stood upright. Moreover, he also opened his delusion breaker Dharma eye. What the Dharma eye saw was the same as what he saw in the origin magnetic space. The only difference was that he was currently inside the wind pillar, and his entire body was swirling with viscous blood, and his body was falling into the abyss at an extremely fast speed. This won't do. I can't fall anymore. I must stop and escape from the wind pillar. Xiao Hua immediately had an idea. However, how could he reduce or even stop his falling speed? Xiao Hua's entire body surged with brilliance, and he used the awakening thunder escape. However, following the surge of Xiao Hua's magic power, the awakening thunder escape only reduced his speed by a little. It was simply not enough to reverse the current situation. After pondering for a moment, Xiao Hua waved his hand, and took out the two magic tools Zichin and Guan Wei from the space. Under the urging of his magic power, the two magic tools exploded one after another, several zhang below Xiaohua. The powerful explosive force indeed reduced Xiaohua's speed by 30%. Right now, Xiaohua was delighted. Taking advantage of the fleeting opportunity, his body suddenly moved. He actually used the ethereal steps shadow shifting technique and moved to the side with difficulty. This side was the key. Xiaohua immediately escaped from the center of the whirlpool, and his entire body began to fall while revolving around the center of the whirlpool. Seeing his body begin to rotate, Xiaohua tried his best to use the awakening thunder escape. The direction of this awakening thunder escape was not upwards, but straight outwards. Thus, within the wind pillar, Xiaohua revolved around the center of the whirlpool. Every time he revolved, he would go further and further away. However, the speed of Xiaohua's descent did not decrease in the slightest. Xiaohua did not have time to care about this at this moment. After flying for an unknown period of time, the more he flew, the more alarmed Xiaohua became. This wind pillar was only a few hundred zhang above the ground. How could it be so wide underground? Just as he was thinking, Xiaohua's body suddenly became light, and the force pulling him down abruptly disappeared. Xiaohua was overjoyed. He hurriedly leaped up, preparing to fly towards the ground. However, right at this moment, from the side of his body, a force even stronger than the downward force just now appeared, pulling him horizontally. Xiaohua's body was originally agitating all the magic power in his body to use the awakening thunder escape to fly to the side. At this moment, his speed did not decrease at all, so Xiaohua did not have the slightest reaction and was immediately pulled in. However, at this moment, Xiaohua's illusion-breaking technique, I saw that this was the same whirlpool as before, but the direction was horizontal. Oh no! Xiaohua smiled bitterly. At this moment, he no longer dared to escape by spinning horizontally like before. If he was spinning horizontally like this, who knew if he would be facing upwards or downwards? If he was facing downwards, wouldn't he die even faster? Moreover, within the whirlpool, there was not only a pulling force, but also an inexplicable force. It was constantly corroding Xiaohua's magic power and his defense. Previously, Xiaohua had even shot out a yellow talisman, but the yellow talisman was like a talisman paper. It was immediately torn apart and had no effect at all. On the contrary, Xiaohua's mighty Vajradharma body emitted a faint golden light under the pull of the netherworld wind. Although it was somewhat worn out, it still looked abnormally solid. Moreover, under Xiaohua's persistent cultivation, there was faint progress. Forget it. Xiaohua temporarily sucked in his heart of struggle. While cultivating the mighty Vajradharma body with all his might, he slightly opened his illusion-breaking technique, and carefully sized up his body. After an unknown period of time, Xiaohua also did not know how many whirlpools of whirlpools had captured him. Whether it was up or down, left or right, Xiaohua was about to see clearly. The whirlpools here were simply disorderly, and the space was also inconceivably large. The scarlet stickiness in his Dharma eyes was almost boundless. Moreover, the longer he stopped, the stickiness became more and more viscous. Xiaohua even felt that stickiness on his body. The whirlpools also gradually turned into liquid. It's over. Xiaohua immediately panicked. In this netherworld, he was just a small ant. Other than being teased by the netherworld wind, what other fate could there be? Moreover, under this kind of power, not to mention Xiaohua's qi refining cultivation, even if he was a Jindan, foundation establishment, nascent soul, or spirit severing, he would not have any means to escape. However, fortunately, Xiaohua still had his Dharma body. Moreover, under the tempering of the netherworld wind, there was actually some progress. However, this progress could barely make up for the loss. When the loss exceeded the gain, it would be the day of Xiaohua's death. Just when Xiaohua was feeling discouraged, his body suddenly seemed to have bumped into something. A burst of brilliance lingered around his body, and Xiaohua's figure suddenly disappeared within the whirlpool. Moreover, the pressure on Xiao Hua's body suddenly disappeared. A kind of pressure that came from all directions wantonly kneaded Xiao Hua's body like a giant hand. Xiao Hua's illusion-breaking technique, I only had time to see a colorful fluorescent light and a black and white light. And then he closed his eyes tiredly. Teleportation? This sudden pressure was so familiar that Xiao Hua could not help but groan. It was just that this pressure was much greater than the previous teleportation formation. If it was not for his Dharma body, he would have fainted the moment he was teleported. The teleportation time was extremely short. Very soon, Xiao Hua's body relaxed. Before he could open his Dharma eyes, another horizontal suction force came, and Xiao Hua could not help but fly forward again. At this time, Xiao Hua was completely speechless. He sighed and did his best to reforge his Dharma body, hoping that he could stay in this boundless netherworld wind for a while longer and obtain a trace of vitality. After an unknown amount of time, Xiao Hua felt that he had been teleported several times. He did not know where he was at this time, and what he saw with his Dharma eyes was that the scarlet color of the netherworld wind was sometimes shallow and sometimes deep. It was not the same. The only thing that was the same was the incomparably powerful tearing force of the netherworld wind. Although Xiao Hua's Vajradharma body was improving very quickly under the might of this heaven and earth, he was already at his wit's end and was in imminent danger. His Dharma body could not be any thinner. Chapter 1786. Seeing the golden brilliance of Xiao Hua's last line of defense, the Vajra Dharma body, gradually disappear, Xiao Hua immediately felt his hands and feet go cold. He could already imagine the miserable state of his body being torn into inch by inch after the Vajra Dharma body disappeared. However, the moment the Vajra Dharma body disappeared, the 132 million small dots that made up the Vajra Dharma body suddenly appeared. These 132 million small dots shrank at an extremely fast speed and actually condensed into one. Then this one and only small dot flashed with a black and red flame and disappeared. But after disappearing, this one and only small dot appeared again in the blink of an eye. Then the 132 million small dots separated from this one and only small dot. However, once the small dots were born this time, they contained a desolate aura. Moreover, although these small dots corresponded to the 132 million small dots on Xiao Hua's body, the composition of these small dots was already different from the composition of the small dots on Xiao Hua's body. The outline formed by these small dots was not the Vajra Dharma body from before, but the shape of a phoenix. Moreover, because of the changes in these small dots, the 132 million small dots on Xiao Hua's body also flashed with black and red flames, and actually wanted to follow the appearance of the phoenix Dharma body and become a phoenix. Xiao Hua's body gradually changed. The originally grayish-white skeleton suddenly flashed with a golden brilliance. After the golden brilliance passed, it became a skeleton that was 80% crimson and 20% white. The crimson color on the skeleton brightened and tightly wrapped around the body. The body struggled several times, but was unable to break free. The 132 million small dots disappeared again, and the body returned to its previous appearance. However, the outline of the phoenix Dharma body had already formed. The wing-like outline slightly flapped, and the crimson viscous liquid in the netherworld wind was extracted, filling the outline of the phoenix Dharma body in a moment. When the phoenix Dharma body was filled and formed, a golden light flashed outside the Dharma body, and a perfect golden body appeared. Xiao Hua was dumbstruck as he sensed all of this, and sensed the formation of a phoenix Dharma body. However, what Xiao Hua didn't expect was that the moment the phoenix Dharma body took shape, an indescribable impulse rushed straight to his head. Xiao Hua couldn't help but clench his fists. He raised his head and roared. Correspondingly, the phoenix Dharma body also spread its wings. A phoenix cry resounded within the pillar of wind. At this time, Xiaohua's body was swept up by a column of wind that came from an unknown direction. He was about to be carried away, but a similar phoenix cry came from the side of the column of wind. This sound was very weak, but in Xiaohua's ears it was like adding oil to a fire, causing the heat in Xiaohua's body to surge even higher. In fact, Xiaohua's phoenix celestial body seemed to have gained sentience, as if it had sensed an ancient desire. With a clear cry, it spread its wings and flew towards the source of the phoenix cry. Under the guidance of the avatar, Xiaohua's corporeal body actually escaped from the wind pillar and rushed into another one. This pillar of wind was different from the previous one. It seemed to be blowing out from the depths of the netherworld. It was incomparably cold. However, this coldness in the heat of Xiaohua's heart, in the indescribable desire of the phoenix law body, was actually like a cool summer breeze. God, a feminine phoenix cry rang out. This phoenix cry was actually filled with extreme joy. Xiaohua's phoenix law body responded with the same joy. With a loud bang, Xiaohua only felt his eyes brighten. He didn't know where he had flown out from, nor did he know if he had escaped from the teleportation array. In short, Xiaohua's eyes were filled with a world of ice. At this time, Xiaohua's eyes were crimson red. The phoenix law body was even more impatient. Its body flickered with golden light, and red flames lingered around it. And in the cold valley where Xiaohua appeared, there was a light green phoenix law body. It was incomparably feminine, and it was barely able to maintain itself in the air. Under the phoenix law body, there was a woman who looked like a fairy. This woman was currently unconscious, and her body was covered in ice, slightly stiff. Wasn't this woman Fairy Hong Xia, who failed to break through the icy wind cultivation method? When Xiaohua's phoenix law body saw Fairy Hong Xia's phoenix law body, it let out a clear cry and pounced over. Fairy Hong Xia's phoenix law body was also filled with joy. As it cried out, the icy green color gradually faded, and it gradually became pure green. Fairy Hong Xia's body was still green, but within her skin, there was a corresponding pink color. When Xiaohua saw Fairy Hong Xia, his eyes lit up with flames of madness. He followed his phoenix celestial body and flew in front of Fairy Hong Xia. Fairy Hong Xia suddenly realized what was going on, and her burning face turned pale. Fairy Hong Xia didn't have time to open her eyes. She stretched out her hand and was about to slap Xiaohua's forehead. However, before this palm could be released, it was immediately grabbed by a strong hand. Fairy Hong Xia smiled sadly. She forced herself to circulate her magic power and was about to break her own heart meridians. However, at this critical moment, Xiaohua's voice entered her ears. Xiaohua. Fairy Hong Xia actually recognized Xiaohua and hurriedly opened her eyes. Indeed, although she hadn't seen him twice, his unforgettable face was right in front of her eyes. Fairy Hong Xia asked almost pleadingly, Xiaohua, is it you? Fairy Hong Xia's voice called out more than 10 times before Xiaohua woke up slightly. Xiaohua replied in a daze. However, Fairy Hong Xia was still worried. She bit his ear and asked, What did I say to you at the Feather Immortal Gathering? You have made your decision. I will with you. Xiaohua said the words that only the two of them knew. Seeing Xiaohua's last line of defense, the golden brilliance of his Vajradharma body, gradually disappearing, Xiaohua immediately felt his hands and feet go cold. He could already imagine the miserable state of his body being torn to pieces after the Vajradharma body disappeared. However, at the moment when the Vajra law body disappeared, the 13,200 small dots that formed the Vajra law body suddenly appeared. These 13200 small dots shrank rapidly and actually condensed into one. Then, this small dot flashed with a black and red flame and disappeared. However, after it disappeared, this small dot appeared again in the blink of an eye. Then, the 13,200 small dots separated from this small dot. However, as soon as these tiny dots were born, They contained a desolate aura. Moreover, although these tiny dots corresponded to the 132,200 tiny dots on Xiao Hua's body, the composition of these tiny dots was already different from the composition of the tiny dots on Xiao Hua's body. The outline of these small dots was not the Vajra body from before, but the shape of a phoenix. In fact, because of the changes in these small dots, the 13,200 small dots on Xiao Hua's body also flashed with black and red flames. They actually wanted to follow the appearance of the Phoenix Law body and transform into the shape of a phoenix. Xiao Hua's body gradually changed. The originally grayish-white bones suddenly flashed with a golden brilliance. After the golden brilliance passed, it became a skeleton that was 80% red and 20% white. The red color on the skeleton shone brightly and tightly wrapped around the body. The body struggled several times, but was unable to break free. The 13200 small dots disappeared again, and the body returned to its previous appearance. However, the outline of the Phoenix Law body had already formed. The wing-like outline slightly flapped, and the scarlet viscous liquid in the netherworld wind was extracted and filled the outline of the Phoenix Law body in a moment. When a Phoenix Law body was filled and formed, a golden light flashed outside the Law body. Unexpectedly, another perfect golden body appeared. Xiao Hua was dumbstruck as he sensed all of this, and sensed the formation of a Phoenix Law body. However, what Xiao Hua did not expect was that the moment the Phoenix Law body formed, an indescribable impulse rushed to his head. Xiao Hua could not help but clench his fists. He raised his head and roared. Correspondingly, the Phoenix Law body also spread its wings, and a phoenix cry resounded in the wind pillar. At this moment, Xiao Hua's body was swept up by a wind pillar in an unknown direction and was about to be moved in a certain direction. However, the same phoenix cry came from the side of the wind pillar. That sound was very weak, but in Xiao Hua's ears, it was like adding oil to the fire, causing the heat in Xiao Hua's body to surge even more. Even Xiao Hua's Phoenix Law body seemed to have intelligence, as if it had sensed an ancient desire. With a clear cry, it spread its wings and flew toward the source of the phoenix cry. Under the guidance of the Law body, Xiao Hua's body actually broke free from the wind pillar and rushed into another wind pillar. This wind pillar was different from the previous one. It seemed to blow out from the depths of the netherworld and was actually incomparably cold. However, this coldness and the heat of Xiao Hua's heart and the indescribable desire of the Phoenix Law body was actually like a cool summer wind. A feminine phoenix cry rang out. This phoenix cry was actually filled with extreme joy. Xiao Hua's Phoenix Law body responded with the same joy. Boom! Xiao Hua only felt his eyes light up. He didn't know where he flew out from, nor did he know if he had escaped from the teleportation array. In short, Xiao Hua saw a world of ice in front of him. At this moment, Xiao Hua's eyes were crimson red, and the Phoenix Law body was even more anxious. Golden light flashed around its body, and red flames lingered around it. In the cold valley where Xiao Hua appeared, there was a light green Phoenix Law body. It was incomparably soft, and it was barely able to maintain itself in the air. Under the Phoenix Law body, there was a fairy-like woman. This woman was currently unconscious, and her body was already covered in ice, slightly stiff. Wasn't this woman Fairy Hong Xia, who failed to break through the icy wind cultivation method? When Xiao Hua's Phoenix Law body saw Fairy Hong Xia's Phoenix Law body, it let out a clear cry and pounced over. Fairy Hong Xia's Phoenix Law body was also happy, and it cried out. The icy green color gradually faded, and it gradually became pure green. Fairy Hong Xia's body was still green, but her skin faintly had a corresponding pink color. When Xiao Hua saw Fairy Hong Xia, his eyes lit up with flames of madness. He followed his phoenix celestial body and flew in front of Fairy Hong Xia. Fairy Hong Xia suddenly realized what was going on, and her burning face turned pale. Fairy Hong Xia didn't have time to open her eyes. She stretched out her hand and was about to slap Xiao Hua's forehead. However, before this palm could be released, it was immediately grabbed by a strong hand. Fairy Red Dawn bitterly smiled. She forcefully revolved her magic power and was about to shatter her own heart meridians. But at this critical moment, Xiao Hua's voice entered her ears. Xiao Hua. Fairy Hong Xia actually recognized Xiao Hua and hurriedly opened her eyes. Sure enough, although she hadn't seen him twice, his unforgettable face was right in front of her eyes. Fairy Hong Xia asked almost pleadingly, Xiao Hua, is it you? Fairy Hong Xia's voice called out a dozen times, and only then did Xiao Hua wake up a little. Xiao Hua responded in a daze. However, Fairy Hong Xia was still worried. She bit his ear and asked, What did I say to you at the Feather Immortal Gathering? You have made your decision. I will with you. Xiao Hua said the words that only the two of them knew. To be continued. For mobile users, please go to m.com to read. Chapter 1787. The heaven and earth spiritual chi in the entire icy valley surged along with the flapping of the wings of the two Dharma bodies. Every time the male phoenix Dharma body flapped, it would enter the female phoenix Dharma body, while the female phoenix Dharma body would return to the male phoenix Dharma body. The phoenix Dharma body actually caused the icy valley to be filled with the feeling of spring. When Xiao Hua was slightly awake, he could already feel the rapid flow of Fairy Hong Xia's true qi. At the same time, Xiao Hua also sensed that something was wrong with Fairy Hong Xia's cultivation. As the saying goes, solitary yin does not give birth, solitary yang does not grow. The Ice Phoenix cultivation method used the solitary yin in the Ice Phoenix bloodline to stimulate and increase one's cultivation. However, success depended on solitary yin, and failure also depended on solitary yin. This solitary yin gives birth to yang was the crux of the Ice Phoenix cultivation method. Countless cultivators with the Ice Phoenix bloodline had lost their lives to this solitary yin gives birth to yang. Although Fairy Hong Xia's talent was outstanding, but in the icy valley, she was also envied by the heavens. Xiao Hua's bloodline, needless to say, it was formed from the blood and flesh of the ancient demonic phoenix. Although its yin-yang attribute was mysterious, its godly bones were of the fire attribute. The condensed phoenix Dharma body was incomparably yang. Furthermore, the Vajra Dharma body was destroyed, and the phoenix Dharma body was reborn. Using the mysterious scarlet substance in the netherworld wind as its body, it was also yang. Therefore, it was the best for Fairy Hong Xia's purine. Xiao Hua felt his true yang and Fairy Hong Xia's true yin slowly harmonizing with each other. Unconsciously, he thought of the secret dual cultivation technique that he had obtained a long time ago. He had originally wanted to give this technique to Xiang Yang and his wife. In his free time, he had roughly looked through it. Now is the time to examine this secret technique. Furthermore, Xiao Hua's body was true qi, while Fairy Hong Xia's body was true essence. Although the blending of true yin and true yang had nothing to do with transcendence energy, it was true qi that flowed. In this aspect, Xiao Hua was naturally inferior to Fairy Hong Xia. Xiao Hua secretly used the secret dual cultivation technique, but Fairy Hong Xia sensed it the moment he used it. However, after a long while, Xiao Hua suddenly realized that even though it was a dual cultivation technique, under the most fundamental fusion of his true yang and Fairy Hong Xia's true yin, everything was just a bunch of small details. Everything was just a bunch of beautiful flowers and couldn't be used for real. My dear Xiao, Fairy Hong Xia muttered, don't do too many useless things. The great Tao is the simplest. After an unknown amount of time, perhaps several hours, several days, or even more than 10 days, several phoenix cries could be heard. Among them, there was the joy of the male phoenix Dharmakaya and the unwillingness of the female phoenix Dharmakaya. Xiao Hua, who was below the avatar, also frowned. How could Fairy Hong Xia not know what Xiao Hua was thinking? Fairy Hong Xia said softly, "My dear Xiao, I thought that once I bid farewell to my dear Xiao, it would be an eternal farewell. I could only freeze here alone. Now, the heavens are treating you and me well. This concubine is able to reunite with Xiao Lang here. I am already satisfied with this gathering. How could I not know your intentions? There are times when a person's strength is limited. I won't blame you." As she spoke, Fairy Hongxia tried to push Xiao Hua away. "Ha ha, Hongxia, my wife, don't underestimate your husband." Xiao Hua laughed heartily. With a wave of his hand, a piece of burning fire essence flame crystal appeared. He slapped his hand on his waist, and immediately a red flame was born from Xiao Hua's body. Furthermore, the endless heat in his meridians was like an endless stream of spirit spring water, flowing into Fairy Hongxia's body. After an unknown amount of time, the two of them flashed with light. Xiao Hua's body was surrounded by red light, and Fairy Hongxia's body was green light. Amidst the red and green light, a light shield appeared around the two of them. Within the light shield, the meridians of the two of them were completely exposed. Io, these are all the meridians in my memory. They're also the meridians that the dragon transformation skill needs to completely refine. Xiao Hua sensed all the meridians. Those meridians were like dragons soaring through the 9 heavens. Fairy Hongxia was even more shocked. This kind of secret of heaven and earth, the mysteries of the human body, was something she had never imagined before. This knowledge of meridians opened a door that she would never have known before. The Xuanyan sect was a valley with endless, icy rain. It was not as cold as the Ice Valley. However, there was a huge waterfall hanging from a mountain stream. A young naked cultivator was sitting cross-legged at the bottom of the waterfall. The seemingly endless icy water continued to fall and hit the cultivator's body as well as the rocks at the foot of the mountain. The rocks were extremely smooth, and there was a faint layer of ice forming. The deafening roar was the furious roar of the waterfall. This cultivator was, needless to say, Xiao Mao. Right in front of the waterfall, at the foot of the same mountain, Xiao Mao's master, Yuan Jiming, was expressionless. He looked at the faint glow around Xiao Mao, and Xiao Mao's slightly pained expression. At this moment, the corner of Yuan Jiming's eyes twitched. He raised his head slightly and saw that in the sky of the valley, thick black clouds had unknowingly covered it. Furthermore, these black clouds contained lightning and thunder. Great! Yuan Jiming could not help but reveal a faint smile. He thought to himself, this old man was worried that without any external help, this kid would miss the opportunity to advance. This thunderstorm is the will of the heavens. In just a moment, as expected, thunder rumbled and lightning flashed. The torrential rain was like a heavenly river bursting its banks, gushing down violently. When the rainwater reached the valley, it was frozen into ice shards. Not only did the waterfall increase in water flow by several times, it was even colder. Under the waterfall, Xiao Mao's body was already green with ice. His lips were also purple, and his body could not help but tremble. Success or failure depends on this. Xiao Mao was naturally aware of his own situation. He tried his best to circulate the dragon transformation art to stabilize his meridians. As his true qi circulated rapidly in his body, he silently circulated the mental cultivation method taught by Xuanyan. He slowly channeled all the pain and ice into his body according to the secret method taught by Yuan Jiming. Bit by bit, he gathered his dermic powers. After an unknown period of time, Xiao Mao's body flashed, and a layer of invisible light formed instantly, blocking the huge force of the waterfall. Roar! Xiao Mao's dermic powers surged, and he could not help but stretch his neck and let out a long howl. However, as the howl disappeared, the light barrier also disappeared. The waterfall continued to fall on his body, causing countless splashes. "Ha, Xiao Mao, come out." Yuan Jiming's eyes flashed with a hint of a smile as he transmitted his voice. Yes, this disciple understands. At this moment, Xiao Mao was already unfazed. He slowly got up from under the waterfall, seemingly effortlessly. Then he flew to the side of the cold pond, took out a Taoist robe from his storage bag, and put it on. Master, this disciple did not disappoint you. Xiao Mao flew to Yuan Jiming's side, knelt and kowtowed. Not bad. Yuan Jiming nodded. I did not expect you to be such a rare talent. In such a short period of time, you actually broke through to the 12th level of Qi. This disciple does not dare. This is all thanks to Master's teachings. Xiao Mao said very respectfully. Ha ha ha. Yuan Jiming laughed. He clapped his hands, took out an item, and handed it over. This is the rainbow cloud. Take it and find a time to consume it. The rainbow cloud. Xiao Mao was shocked. He hurriedly caught it and whispered, this is a spiritual medicine that can stimulate spiritual will. Master, you are giving me. Ha ha. Xiao Mao, have you been complaining that I did not allow you to stimulate spiritual will when you were in the 11th level of Qi? Yuan Jiming laughed. Xiao Mao said fearfully, Master, this disciple does not dare. Even though I heard that the 11th level of Qi is the best time to stimulate spiritual will, but this is only hearsay. Master is a cultivator of the Golden Course stage. You definitely know more than me. This disciple does not dare to complain. Haha, that's good. Yuan Jiming stroked his goatee and laughed. Everyone thinks that the 11th level of Qi is the best time to stimulate spiritual will. There are even some cultivator families who think that the earlier the spiritual will is stimulated, the better. Some families even find strange ways to allow their disciples to have spiritual will at the 10th level of Qi. But how could they know that these are all stimuli? What do you mean by pulling a seedling to help it grow? This is called pulling a seedling to help it grow. Spiritual will is naturally produced. Why do you need to stimulate it? Xiao Mao was shocked. His face was filled with admiration. He looked at the rainbow cloud in his hand and whispered, Master, if I consume this rainbow cloud, won't it stimulate spiritual will? Child, Yuan Jiming scolded. The rainbow cloud is the nourishment for spiritual will. Stimulating spiritual will requires the rainbow cloud to stimulate the growth of spiritual will. Now that you are in the 12th level of Qi, there is already a seed of spiritual will. This rainbow cloud is the fertilizer for it to break out of its cocoon and die. That you're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.